Final Fantasy VIII was Square at its most ambitious, but you can also see that they were looking to be different. With beauty like this, it's hard not to fall in love with the creativity and the dedication to go so outside the wheelhouse. Final Fantasy VIII is a colossal departure of what came before, and I think, looking back on it now, was the only way this could have worked. Sort of. It is an unconventional, stylized, and in past Little Michael's eyes, a wonderful game. But what about present Michael, that's me, or even future? With plenty of JRPGs experience in the decades since I first witnessed the conclusion of Squall's journey, where do I stand now? There's a lot surrounding this game and its reputation of being the black sheep of Final Fantasy. You have the nostalgia surrounding this game, hatred towards Squall's blasé attitude, a god-tier OST in my opinion, and well, time hasn't been kind to some aspects of this game. Or have they always been that way? There's a wildly messy plot that seems to be all over the place, but only because it hides important information from you. One of my favorite aspects of this game is the crazy foreshadowing, like this singular little clip right here. And the best hard game to exist. I'm sorry, Rinoa, just one more round before we save the world. This is a retrospective, so that means I want to know what you felt or feel about this game. Memories are good to encapsulate, so write them down below, whether you need to sort through your feelings or praise this divisive Final Fantasy entry. Just remember, get yourself in the mindset that Final Fantasy VIII, it's meant to feel different from what has come before in Final Fantasy and in RPGs in general. So set that in the back of your mind as we dive in deep to see if Final Fantasy VIII is worth your time. Unique is the word that always comes to mind when I think of Final Fantasy VIII. I knew it when I was playing it back when it was released because my friend who'd introduced me to Final Fantasy VII came over to play my demo disc that I got with Brave Fencer Musashi. And he didn't like it at all. And being very Squall-like, I guess, I had to keep it to myself that I really liked what I was seeing. I should have known right then what this game would culminate into. A well-received, divisive Final Fantasy game, and truly the start of modern Final Fantasy in a way. We already had a slight departure in Final Fantasy VI and the juggernaut that was 7, but 8 was such a shift that people were complaining about cars. Even though they were featured in Final Fantasy VII, just not as apparent, apparently. But this was my Final Fantasy game growing up. I really liked 7, but there was something about 8 that spoke to me. I wanted to be Squall. Even though I turned into a Zell Laguna hybrid instead, but I could relate to Squall. And that was maybe the first time I'd ever had that in a game. Also, he had brown hair like me and he was the protagonist, and I thought that was cool. It is funny now, revisiting this game as an older man and no longer a kid, a lot has changed. His journey still resonates in a relatable way, but I can clearly see the faults, and I find that fascinating. Little me was swept away in the grandeur of the game, while also knowing this wasn't anything like Super Mario RPG, Pokemon Blue, or Final Fantasy VII, my most familiar framework. And there was an allure to that. But let's go to the past. Here's a little snapshot of what people were saying about Final Fantasy VIII back then. This review is from Games Radar, This is, in all possibility, the most stunningly attractive game the PlayStation has ever known. I mean, little me agreed, and there's part of me that looks at this, I'm like, heck yes. Or from Armchair Empire, between the story, the beautiful graphics, music score, and the insanely enthralling card game minigame, Final Fantasy VIII does the series proud. And that last bit, does the series proud, is an interesting take back then, now looking at it now. And here's a little snapshot of the future, but now in the past, with my stats of the remastered version, which I played for this go-around. This is the time around my last save before facing off against the last boss. I was at 32 hours and 48 minutes, so after doing the final battle and watching the ending cutscene and credits, maybe a little under 34 hours to make my way to the end of this game. A big caveat, I knew what I was doing with this playthrough, and my first time finishing this, I was closer to 65 hours and a much higher level than what I have right here. Finishing this game, Squall was at level 26, my lowest level was 18 with Quistis and Irvin, and Zell was 23, Rinoa, Selphie were 25. Once in a while, I did use the speed up options that came with the remastered version, but I didn't rely on them that often. I wanted to see how quickly I could beat this game and tried for a bit of a lower level run to see how that felt. I collected 11 of the 16 Guardian Forces, with my highest level being 33, and that was for Carbuncle. My final seed rank was 9 at the end of the game. Now let's go back to the past to look at another review, because I think it'll set up the next part of this retrospective. Hot Games said, the game's major weakness is in the combat system. There's too many loopholes that can be exploited with the draw technique, making combat tedious and mundane after a while. With Final Fantasy VIII being different, this is one of the changes, or the complete overhauls to this game. There's still the ATB system, which we'll get into, but obviously, even with a high score, there was that asterisk right there. I mean, even the wonderful reviews, 90 score overall. There just seems to be a divisive element to some of these reviews, for the most part, even with the high review scores. And this lays the foundation for the many differences that Final Fantasy VIII does from the rest of its kin. It strived to be different, and different it did become. Starting with basically throwing out everything that came before, for better or worse. Junction, whether you like it or not, is the lifeblood of Final Fantasy VIII, and it's a really cool system in theory and a mixed bag in execution. Now, if you are someone that likes to tamper and experiment, it's a really cool system, and the freedom to take characters down any sort of route is satisfying. Pairing these characters to a Guardian Force that can learn skills in any order you deem necessary, the path to building out your characters is highly variable. Which is great, but it also means that there's just a lot that has to go into the system before it starts to make sense or feel like you're making progress. Scratch that, you can draw yourself 100 cures pretty early on and your health is going to go way up. So that's almost immediate progress. All your stats are attached to magic for the most part. When you level up, you still get a small boost to base stats like your max health increasing, but it's very negligible considering when you level up, so do monsters you fight. So how you feel stronger in this game is weapon upgrades and the ultimate important magic, which can be drawn from the world or drawn directly from enemies. In concept, I think this is pretty cool. Magic in this world is only utilized by people called sorceresses, and it wasn't until a certain someone created paramagic, and then you could draw it out of the environment. So in some senses, magic is newish from a lore standpoint, and so the morality of junctioning these guardian spirits is also new. And Balam Garden, where you're from, is the only one that does this. More on that later. I like all the lore aspects of how it came together. It sounds cool when you do it, when you draw it out. It looks cool. And there's a lot of customization built in on who to give it to, what specific stat do you attach it to, and which ones are you going to reserve for using. You can also cast the magic that enemies have stored, so instead of using your stocked cures, you can cast it directly on your turn to heal a fellow party member. That little bit of choice in the battle is nice, and I used it a lot more this go around than I had in previous playthroughs. Now the drawback is, if you use the magic that is Junction to your attack trait, eventually, if you use enough of it, you will see your damage slowly deplete along with the amount of magic stocked. Now, this does take a long while for it to see some drastic effects, so you really don't need to worry about having 100 cures versus 96. Also, knowing that some of these are fairly easy to get through refining through Guardian Force skills or from draw points that are scattered along the world, it isn't an issue if you're not trying to be a perfectionist and never dipping into magic linked to a specific trait. It is a con, though. You're technically weakening yourself, so more or less you have to either give a higher form of magic like Cura and attach that to your character, then give them a handful of cures like I did for Squall, say like 14 of them, and use that when you need it. There are more workarounds, and I started building out people with certain affinities like that. Zell was my haste user to cast along with double or triple magic. Rinoa is my ice magic user. Squall, for the most part, didn't use magic. He mugged and sliced up everybody. I like the depth this gives you, especially when you start factoring in status effects. Rinoa using blind on her pinwheel, or Squall attaching zombie to his gunblade attack stat, and then Rinoa would use Curaga and just drop the enemies. There's a lot of cool combinations that you can experiment with. Not to mention you can play defensively, where you start gaining health for magic attacks if you get the affinity up high enough, or the chance of status effects working on you highly decreases because of resistances. Now, getting those stocks up can be, well, fairly tedious. It's not a set amount you'll be drawing each time. Sometimes you'll fail, usually on more rare magic, and it just takes a while to do in general with a combination of the animation and the overall game speed of battle. But if the enemy isn't doing any status effects and not destroying your health, you can get a lot of magic from one encounter, especially if you have all your characters drawing one particular magic, let's say like Blizzard or something, because then afterwards you can give all that magic to a single character and then move on to another one. And remember, you will get skills from your Guardian Forces to also boost this refinement from items and materials that drop from these battles. So there's easier ways to gain the amount of magic you need. And if you're playing with speed mods or have the remastered version of Final Fantasy VIII, that tedium is much less. I didn't fully rely on it this time around, but once in a while I turned it on to ease that time to stock up on some magic, because I did want to feel what it was like when I was playing this on my PS1 originally. Child Michael, how much time you had. And speaking of replenishing your magic through these draw points, I think this whole draw point around the landscape is neat and does make the world feel different from things that have come before. A solid world building and functionality works better than actually drawing from the enemies most of the time, but I do like its inclusion. I think it's a solid, unique system that actually works even with some of its drawbacks to being different for different sake. At its core, the system is well thought out, even if you can make yourself super strong very early and make the game a breeze. But that's the thing, you can do that. You have the freedom to experiment and tinker. Do I recommend looking up a guide for the best build and magic junction? No, but if that's more of your style, I bet you could figure it out without even having to look anything up once you learn the basics of this junction system. I mean, young me got through this entire game without having a way to look up any guides. Yes, I'm old. So I believe in you. You can do this. But that is a criticism that gets thrown at this game. You can easily break the game and become overpowered. I mean, if you really wanted to in any game, you can stay at the first town or right outside that first dungeon area and just grind until you are super overpowered and then breeze through the rest of the game. There really isn't a difference. It's just how you can implement and manipulate this system versus others. And I do love this tinkering aspect, but with the amount of times you swap out characters, it can be tedious to reset everything up. Mainly because I wanted to always use every single Guardian Force I had available instead of keeping them linked to each other. But they have a handy dandy swap magic and junction ability of characters. This is easy and quick to understand and gets the job done. The only time it worked against me was when I accidentally gave all my magic to someone else and had to swap them back to my character because I was doing my whole, this character is a thunder character, this is the other one. So I had to manually swap my magic to this other character. Rinoa had all the shells and now I accidentally gave it to Selfie. That's just my own little complaint. The monster's level scaling isn't my favorite aspect. It makes leveling seem superfluous, but you need AP to level up Guardian Forces to get more skills, so there is that. And there's a certain Guardian Force that gives you level up and level down skill, which I used to love doing when I was a kid. Why shouldn't I make these bite bugs level 100 only because I wanted to and see what would happen? There are still reasons to fight enemies. They will drop materials, or if you have another early game skill, if you prioritize it, turning enemies into cards, which still gets you AP, but not experience, so you don't level too quick, and you can still get items from using a skill to break down the cards into materials. Just another way to utilize this multifaceted system, multiple ways to get the materials and magic that make you stronger. You can ignore that entire aspect and just fight and level. That was my main approach the first time playing this game, and I made it to the end. The overall concept of Junction works and can be a tinkerer's dream, but it makes everything so open that some of the rigidity that I expect is gone, and that can make it just not as simple as I want it to be sometimes. You have to use the system, not something that can be ignored, which obviously that makes sense since it's the basis for the entire combat system. But you do have to get a decent grasp on it, or else some of these bosses are going to pummel you. Especially when you get some higher levels where the monsters start using stronger magic. Even in this playthrough, where I was trying to do a pseudo low-level approach, there were some bosses that hit me like a truck because I just didn't have a stat for vitality to up my health, or my magic defense was lower for that character, so I had to mess around with my setup to make it a bit more even before trying again. Or attacking in a different way, make sure to blind or silence the enemy. Which I will say, being able to blind or slow some enemies and even bosses while just normally attacking is really cool. And happy that bosses aren't immune to every status effect in the book, so they actually feel useful, and I respect that. Junctioning goes hand in hand with these Guardian Forces I've been mentioning, which is your first major quest to go grab a new one. You'll recognize some of the names: Shiva, Ifrit, Leviathan. They're your summons from past Final Fantasy games, and if this is your first one, they're these bigger-than-life beings with super cool special moves. My gosh, are some of these so cool. And the design of Ifrit in particular is so freaking cool to me. I love his beast form compared to what I knew from Final Fantasy VII, and he looks so cool. And the variety of summons are a highlight of this game. They junction to our characters and give them stat boosts, and also get to learn special skills like being able to find secret drop and save points, to being able to increase our base stats every time we level up, or refine a bunch of that magic we've been drawing to get even stronger magic amongst a whole plethora of skills. Heck, they even have a quality of life skills you could learn, like half encounter to full on no encounters. So you don't even need the remaster or mods. They got them built in if you want them. When you summon them in battle, they act like your characters do. They have an ATB system, active time battle. So you're waiting for your characters to fill up their gauge to be able to do an action. Guardian Forces, once summoned, have to wait until their gauge is depleted before they can come in and do their awesome looking attack on that boss or just random minions. While in that summon state, where this game does it differently, is their HP is shown. And the character that has them junctioned, if they take an attack, their health goes down versus your character's health. A pretty cool system. Therefore, you can also buy and find items to revive your Guardian Forces or heal them after or during battle. I just think this is a super cool idea that totally works for me. They feel like a part of my party. And I can't reiterate, they are so cool. And they are definitely more on the monster spectrum versus like these godlike humanoid spectrums of a lot of Final Fantasy games, and I appreciate that change up. We get some crazy guys. I mean, look at this dude, Pandemonium, awesome. It's got that little bit of catch them all mentality that I also love, and I think they are varied and just downright a cool bunch of summons to befriend that make the game a lot more fun to go through. Plus super cool looking moves that damage everyone when there isn't a lot of early or even mid-game magic that targets everyone. It's a nice way to mow down a lot of enemies in style. And I think the best part is there are quite a few optional ones to collect, which having side quests be linked to godlike monsters, which then unlock new skills for you to use in battle, so there's a big boon to going to collect these, and plus you get to see them summoned in battle and do a bombastic move. That's the kind of side content I like to pursue. There's a lot of avenues where it makes sense to go after these things. Now, if you're playing the original version, these super cool summons can start eating up the clock a bit. On the remastered version, or if you have some quality of life mods, having your party all summon guardian forces in battle and pressing the fast forward button to see the monsters get blasted, that's just a beautiful thing to behold. And that's a good point to meander into. This game is slow. Not excruciatingly, but everything takes time. This is not Legend of Dragoon slowness in battle, which I played on original hardware. There's a retrospective on this channel, but we get to see our cast of characters run up to damage or prepare to fight, which again just takes more time. Alongside even getting into battle, we have to pan the camera a couple times and introduce the enemies or our lovely cast's faces. I think from a mood perspective, this does elevate a lot of the battles, so they feel like they have a little bit more meaning, giving that premium feel. But like most things, it takes up time. And when you're doing a lot of encounters and haven't unlocked the in-game half encounter, it can get tiresome if you're a busy adult. I generally still play my JRPGs the first time with no bells or whistles to really see how it feels. My recommendation with this one, don't always try to speed things up. Get a feel of the actual flow, but then use it at your leisure. I use it once in a while when going on a draw grind or when I was unloading a bunch of summons, because there is no way to shorten those wonderful looking moves, which is a bit of a bummer. Because after you've seen Diamond Dust for the 15th time, well, you know. An option they do allow you is, since this is an ATB system, they do allow you to turn it from active to wait. So if you're getting stressed about the enemy attacking while you're planning out your moves, this will stop them from attacking if you're in a sub menu. So once you go down to your magic tab, it will then wait for you to find the correct magic and use it. I didn't have this turned on in my playthrough, and there was a bit of that hectic fun of really needing to cast this heal or I'm going to die on the next hit. I love that bit of frantic excitement, though I can see how that could be frustrating as well. Thankfully, you can still pause. Also in the menu, you can lower the speed of battle or increase it. And then of course you have the in-game version of using haste on your characters to speed up encounters. I like that there's a decent amount of options to have you get a gauge where you want the speed of this game to be if you're making decisions in real time, so to speak. The overall pace is still slow, even with some of these changes, but if you have a high speed stat, so your ATB gauge fills up quicker for your character, and you put on that haste, you can attack multiple times before any enemy hits you once. And I love that bit of power scaling, because it feels like I'm manipulating the system versus the speed up options given to me. At the end of the day, it's not really that different, but still cool that it's there. What you're doing in encounters totally ends up being what you decide to pursue in your Junction endeavors, but there is a rush that ATB brings to harder boss fights. Starting to sweat as you watch your time gauge fill up, trying to remember where you put the cure in the list to heal your comrade before the boss decides to do that move that hits everyone. It's a rush. And even though the bosses don't throw too many crazy elements at you, there are plenty of ways to take them down. I enjoyed the combat, mainly wanting to see what crazy moves these monsters and bosses pulled off. Also, that enticing thing of seeing what the next version of Blizzard looks like when I cast it against them. I'm always a sucker for good-looking moves in games, the spectacle. And this game has a plethora of them. Or if you know what you're doing, you can pummel everyone with limit breaks, because most of what you envision you can make happen in this battle system. To be different, yet again, actually, in this aspect, there hasn't been totally a consistency in limit breaks, but limit breaks in this game activate when you are at lower health, or at least have a better option of activating. And you'll know this especially because when you get to lower health, it turns yellow. An actual pop of color on the UI it's strange to see. So technically you can keep a Squall at lower HP, and the beginning of battles, you can easily trigger his limit break to wipe out some enemies. I used this tactic when I was a kid. I would also spam the circle button even if my character wasn't in the yellow. I knew they were probably pretty close, and I just kept jamming the button, waiting to hear that beautiful ping noise to use my limit breaks. I think the coolest part about Squall's limit break is that how he goes about doing his moves changes depending on what boss he's fighting. Sometimes it's the usual one, but he has boss-specific animations, which is, I think, just really cool to me. And like everything about this battle system, there's another way to get a limit break by using magic or stones, or using another limit break. Aura stones, if used, can be converted to aura, which make your characters glow yellow and then can use limit breaks without being in that lower HP state. Super useful move. Selphie's limit break can also cast aura in one of the options, even though I usually went the full cure route. But having Zell or Squall use their limit, and then I'm using Selphie's limit right after to get full cure, just those fun little strategies you figure out as you go along. And to be different, once again, you get these limit breaks by getting a new weapon, but you don't just buy them in the store. You have to collect magazines, then you go to the shop with the materials to craft them with a bit of gil. You get those items from fighting or stealing from the enemies, or turning cards you've collected by battling, or by stealing them from your Triple Triad opponents. We'll get there. So again, there's a lot of ways to get these things that you need. And that gil that you need, your money, you don't get from monsters. You have a set salary after an early point in the game that goes up or down as you play depending on your actions. If you keep fleeing from battle, for example, your overall rank will go down and therefore your money will dwindle. It's so different in a weird way. This is one of those diversions from the path of normality that had come before that to me is just, it's fine. I get it. We're totally restructuring this whole thing, this whole concept. And the problem is it's not as intuitive as you just don't have a lot to spend your money on with how often you get drops. And again, I don't need to go buy magic items because I get a lot of status and curing magic from playing a lot of cards. I just can't stop it. So if you're playing a lot of Triple Triad, you really don't have a lot to spend your gil on. I don't mind the execution in theory, but there need to be more use of gil with this system overhaul. You can take tests in the menu to increase your pay, another weird and different approach that I actually do like, but again, not much to do with money in the game, so it seems a bit worthless. Though, if you spend your money on tents and then refine those tents into curagas, it's a nice way to utilize that gil to strengthen and pad out some healing magics. See, there's always a way to get some things in this game. There are plenty of times in this game where you will be doing mini-game-like things. On a mission, you'll be trying to enter codes before getting caught. You'll be mashing the X button to move a container, or trying to ride a chocobo, but you have to play a mini-game to do it, or just pay the boy some gil. Hey, another use for that pesky gil. Then there's the split of side quests being more involved, in it being a dungeon that will lead you to a new summon. I love those portions. I think the game ties in side quests and minigames and optional content in a very nice way. But there is nothing more wonderful than Triple Triad. I told myself, I've played this game before. I can get a couple of cards, refine some items, and then move on. And it infected me yet again. I kept playing. I told myself multiple times, you don't need these cards. But what happened is I would be like, can I play cards with this person? I don't remember. And then I would see the Rinoa card or the Cypher card would pop up. And I'd be like, I have to have them. It's so freaking addicting. I couldn't pull myself away, even though I told myself, nope, just focus on the main story. Let's get through the story. Remember everything that you loved, everything that maybe caused some friction. And it was there every time. I had the power to not press square, but I couldn't resist it. As long as certain rules don't get passed, Triple Triad is simple and just absolutely fun. Cards have 4 numbers per the cardinal directions, and the biggest number eats the little number. Simple in design, and I love that, and you're playing on a 9-square grid. You get to take your lovely monsters and humans in card form and battle it out and take the loser's card as bragging rights. Plus, you have this wonderful art. I love the character art in this game, and here we go, I get to keep experiencing it over and over. It's inherently a fun game by design, and only gets tarnished when some rules make it either too complicated or just annoying. Some of the rules are fine, others, like the dreaded random, where it just picks random cards in your deck instead of you choosing, not so fun. Even when I had a more limited selection because I kept refining my extra cards, this still wasn't the optimal way to play at all. Like a rule I enjoy and I think is totally fine is the element rule. Certain spots will have an element on the screen like fire, and if your card has an affinity to fire, you get +1 to all your numbers. Or -1 if you don't have that affinity. Not too complicated, still pretty easy to understand. What I do love, outside the addicting music, is two things, which one I already touched on. The cards are beautiful, all those wonderful character portraits, and second, the UI space or the board you're setting your cards on is actually colorful. No dull UI, outside of picking your cards from the list, so yay to not keeping the same UI for these card matches. A pop of color is a welcome surprise. Seriously though, if you're a fan of cards, I would be astonished if you didn't find this game a bit fun or addicting. Collecting the cards around the world and being able to snag rare cards from fellow students is just oh so fun. I've played this game a decent amount of times and I have to play this card game. It's just a rule. I just have to do it. And I love it so much. It really comes down to that. There's almost something that you cannot replicate, and that is how it feels playing Final Fantasy VIII and what it looks like on a CRT TV versus what it looks like now. The character models themselves are this mass of well-defined, jagged pixels. It's funny how well they hold their forms, but also hard on the eyes if you haven't seen the original models in a long time, or if you're seeing these models processed on a modern TV. Some of the footage that I'm interspersing in this retrospective is taken from World of Long Plays, their channel, and their whole entire website. You should go check them out. And to me, it looks different than what I'm seeing on my CRT. And what I saw on my CRT back when I was a kid. Obviously, there's a lot of different things going on there with that aspect, but it does look differently. So you need the CRT scan lines really to mesh well. Now, a lot of mods do help with this, because if you don't have it, or you have the remaster version, it just feels different. And I mean, that is what it is. And they are so different if you came from Final Fantasy VII. But man, do I love the correctional body proportions, as opposed to everything that came before. This was a divisive point back then, and I loved how they looked when moving them around the environments. And even with not having the most clarity back then and now, you can still have enough to see who each person is, because they're designed well enough around each other. Now, there is certain portions of the game where you're in uniforms, a little bit less. So yes, Squall, I think you're the best looking guy here, even with all the pixel mess. What is also kind of hurting, but also helping, is the pre-rendered graphics make the less than smooth character models a bit more jarring, but man, is it still a beautiful game when you're walking around these locales. The remaster obviously changes character models, it refines them, and I think most of them are fine overall. It loses some of the allure when you put smoothing and definition on these character models. You don't do that for the backgrounds. These characters stand out for different reasons now. Squall, you're still handsome. You look a lot different. I think it's the artistic choice. If I was going to get upgraded models, I'd have them more modeled closer to their in-game portraits. There's something not totally line up when you put them side by side. I think the remaster visually is a fine way to play. It's probably the second or third best way to experience this game. Native on your CRT, this is going to look better, but as a whole, that's not a very optimal way to play for access and, well, some quality of life things. I think the best way to play this game would be on PC with some graphics mods that don't go too heavy. Find a CRT filter that will mesh around, but you're playing this on an HD TV or a monitor, and it might be hard to get that balance right, but I think that is the optimal way to play. No worries about using quality of life mods, that's fine by me, just don't use a different soundtrack or something like that. This OST is so good, and sometimes when you look at mods, they have these over-encompassing mods that change the soundtrack, so just be warned. Play with the original soundtrack. The remaster works and runs great on my Nintendo Switch, and this will be totally fine for a first experience playthrough, even if it isn't a remaster at its best. It's more about the missed potential over the actual game itself. Well, there's some missed potential in the actual game itself as well, but we'll get into that. I don't think it will ever give another shot, but who knows? I really hope it does. And hey, if you're enjoying this so far, still lots to go, you should hit that like button and stick around, because in the future there'll be plenty more JRPG retrospectives and modern RPG reviews. That would be great, or whatever. Let's set the stage in an interesting way. A disc change screen. What a vibe. Just look at this. Changing discs, and this is what you're giving me, it brings up so many emotions looking at that. Cozy comfort, and just that developers cared. I mean, that's a lot of different elements right there for such a simple thing to do back in the day, and it shows. Just for swapping out the disc. I love it. I love the care, the thought process, the dedication, everything. Beyond being a new Final Fantasy game, what drew me into this world and what still has a firm grip on my soul is the visual design of this world and the CGIs that truly bring it to life in a vast and varied way. The first time you walk out of the infirmary and it naturally transitions into a cutscene is absolutely fantastic. And this game continues to do this all throughout the experience, and every time I think it's so freaking awesome. We just don't get this design aspect basically at all in games, and it's a true encapsulation of what designers were trying to evoke back then. They wanted you a part of this world and seem like the character you're manipulating in this environment, and it truly is there. This truly feels like a showcase of technology and directional art in the best of ways. Also, it can be funny knowing you can move around however you like in these cutscenes because they are overlaying with the gameplay, and I find that funny and also awesome. Even with the dated graphics of the main game, I think these cinematics hold up incredibly well. Young me couldn't fathom the impact or importance of this radar tower being constructed, but you better believe it was freaking sweet to behold. Even if I was like, oh, okay, cool, that's a lot of detail and time spent on revealing a comms tower. Another mark on, hey, this game isn't telling you exactly why this is so important, but if you've messed around in that terminal in the beginning of the game, you might have some insight. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Thanks, Quistis, for telling us to check the terminal. Now, even with having dated graphics of the original version, you have a wonderful vibe of the pre-rendered backgrounds, which are just a feast for the eyes. We have many moments where these backgrounds are alive with motion in the best of ways. I shouldn't be transfixed by a spinning sign, but I am, and I think it's more so the attention to details of some of these environments. One single screen and they put this much care and detail. It's just one of those games where I'm constantly looking at the environment. Even if the version I played this go around makes it difficult sometimes to pick out some of the finer details, but man, sometimes you truly just have to stop and gawk at these things. It's one of the aspects that makes Final Fantasy VIII World seem like it's teeming with possibilities, and it just makes it so unique with the modern sci-fi vibes that are smushed together. The design of Balam Garden alone is just a beautiful location, and it's kind of weird it's so beautiful for, a place where they train kids to become soldiers. Bit odd that. But even in this starting location, there are places you probably won't even go to. And just reminds me of the care that takes to make these games and what percentage are you actually seeing at the end of the day? This is what older Michael is thinking about these days. Apparently. Young Michael's like, oh man, this is cool. Let me show me this, show me that. And obviously the pairing of music heightens the visuals for me, but this is a place I'd like to call home. Seems really nice. As long as you don't go in the basement. And this game is not afraid of brighter colors. Thank you. As you can tell from Balam Garden itself, a lot of the colors can be muted on the world map in certain towns, but there are some bright design choices that I need to see in my RPGs. I need the games to look vivid and stunning to balance out the ratio, especially if it's a more somber story. This game has some absolutely pleasant towns to explore, like one of the first cities you go to, just this cool, simple beachside town. And that really reflects the modern aesthetic of our world, which I found that pairing to be really interesting. This game also runs the gamut of types of towns you'll be visiting, like every good RPG should. The small village towns, more rural and secluded, and some bigger ones that are more modern or more advanced. I'm just happy we get colors. The remaster takes some of the colors and mutes them more so than the original, which is kind of a bummer. I think it has something to do with things aren't as jagged and pixelated because of the smoothing features, but it does change some of the way the colors were originally presented. And what I like is they utilize these backgrounds in various ways and doing little camera tricks that they do every so often, like switching the focus as you're walking. I noticed it quite clearly in Deling City, just a nice little touch. Framing these shots to make this workout must have taken some time to get down into concept. And that's the overall thought process for all these transitions with pre-rendered backgrounds. The variety of shots vary so much, and we do lose that with modern games where you have full control of the camera. For the most part, when you're walking around, you don't have to think as highly as you did about the direction of the shots, where you'll be entering, how close we are to the party, how zoomed out we can go to make this work. There are some beautiful shots staged in a way to invoke a feeling. I think Wyndham, being a very zoomed out approach when you're walking around, invokes a different feeling than if it was very close. Or when you're meeting with Rinoa on a train and how you're walking in from the right to hide who it is you're meeting, and it's not even a direct angle once the shot is complete. Or in Fisherman's Horizon next to a save point where you have this nice view of the solar panels far below, and you get a nice perception switch when you're actually traversing down into that path. It's just so darn cool back to back. Or in some pivotal scenes where we'll get this almost overhead view. I love how much the camera angles change in this game in particular. When I think I know what a shot they're going to throw at me, they change it up. Like this so freaking unique shot. If you would have told me this is how we're going to film or direct this scene, I would have never come up with this. Zell and Rinoa talking, but it's a close shot of glassware. How did this even come about? I don't know, but I love it. This game is full of that, of the different angles, and I was never bored with that. I would never say Final Fantasy VIII is lacking in the visual department. It's visually striking, and its overall design it absolutely works for me. It's a feast for the eyes, even with some of the setbacks. I mentioned this earlier, the same cannot be said about the UI. It's really boring. Knowing you're going to be in the menus often in this game, using abilities, transferring your spells, taking tests, it's kind of a bummer. I just would have liked some more options. The perk of this being legible and easy to read, which could outweigh the boringness factor, but it sucks that it just doesn't have that pizzazz. At the end of the day, it's a menu, so not too much to care about there, but in an RPG with being in menus all the time, it's worth pointing out. Navigating isn't too bad. There's a couple of menu shifts on certain aspects when trying to get people's limits, or scrolling over to Junction status effects on attack or defense. That makes it a bit outside of a simple design approach, we'll say. Not the end of the world, but it starts to add up. Now here's a nebulous term, pacing, and it's very hard to define what makes a game good at pacing because it relies heavily on you as the person. But for me, I think each of the discs, I'm just going to leave that in there. Each of the discs have a varying degree of what I would consider good pacing. It's a hard thing to determine because I've played this game before as well, so I know what's going on, but I'm talking about mission structure and what you can go out and do and how you're getting from plot point A to plot point B. This game is structured and paced extremely well in my opinion for the most part, mainly because it almost hides its dungeons. Generally speaking, there isn't these sweeping traditional dungeons compared to other games in the genre, and sometimes that can feel a bit off. I mean, there's no treasure chest to collect as you navigate through these areas. The places you're going seem to be more a part of this world, and the mission structures differ than other games that I've played even after this game came out. This could also be a turnoff because, again, it's a different experience compared to most of those games, and you might miss that classic dungeon feel. The grinding to get more money, to get the new equipment, and you can go out of your way to explore, and you most likely will have a reward. You can run into some interesting things in parts of this game that lead to great things, but it's far from your typical dungeon experience. There's some great locales. Look at this. Or this. It helps that these places will be filled with unique takes on classic Final Fantasy enemies and a gaggle of new ones, which again will lead to cool moves being used on you, which is always a plus. So where I stand on the dungeon aspect as a whole, I think it works for this game in particular and how they structured the overall game, but I do not want it in all my RPGs, but I'm happy it's here because it feels really cool. I've thought about this a lot, and I'm not going to say this is definitively my opinion overall, because it can be swayed very easily when there are so many good examples in this particular catalog of options. I think this OST has the best pairing of emotional and feel to any Final Fantasy games when looking at the synergy to what is happening on screen and what you're hearing. It elicits the correct mood almost in every single occasion, and I'm trying to take nostalgia out of this, but my gosh, this music when you first encounter someone just screams a budding relationship. Or this battle track that conveys the epicness of the confrontation or the importance of it. And the soundtrack goes to some weird places with a bit more psychedelic weirdness. But one of my favorite tracks is the emotional swell of The Oath. It fits the mood of the story when you think about child soldiers and what it means to try and fight against destiny. It comes in pivotal scenes, but it's one of those songs that just wells me up with emotion. The soundtrack captures the essence of Final Fantasy VIII. There's some resonance with past works, but a lot of it is new and has a very different feel than what has come before, because that's what Final Fantasy VIII is all about. Such a standout in the musical department. One of the best OSTs for any game, and I'm so happy it exists, so please do yourself a favor and at least listen to it in the background while cleaning or working someday if you have got no plans to boot up Final Fantasy VIII yourself and play. It's oh so freaking good. That's my bias slipping through, but I still think it magically pairs with this game as a whole that it wouldn't be anywhere near the same if it was a different tone. And that's also me saying I don't love some of the songs on it. They fit the mood of the game and don't always have to be pleasant to listen to outside of the game. It covers every aspect, and man, one of the best soundtracks out there and could be the best Final Fantasy soundtrack. The driving force of this game being a love story, I actually enjoy. It's not every facet that makes up this journey, but all its imagery presents it that way. What it means when someone polarizing shows up and challenges your ways of thinking by having a different outlook on life. Also, what happens when life keeps getting in the way. More on people destined by fate later on. Final Fantasy VIII does things a bit different. It raises a few characters to the stars and lets others meander below the clouds. Most times in RPGs, the main protagonist gets the most shine, but this game takes that bit and really goes for it. Also splits it and then sprinkles it a bit more. Like everything, Final Fantasy VIII is quite a bit different. But for now, let's start with our leading man. Squall is the guiding star in how perception can shape judgment. A young man who keeps how he's feeling almost entirely to himself, even though us as the players see the deluge of thoughts his own mind conjures before making decisions or talking to people. Everyone else, though, has an entirely different perception of him. The unfeeling, quiet loner who doesn't care. That latter bit nearly becomes his own destiny, shaped by a past that informs his present. There's a lot. He's a complex character that takes a long time to shed his own baggage, and for the player that can be an excruciating long time, to the point where it might be a little too late. To me though, that's how life can be. Sometimes it just takes a certain new shakeup to make you change your ways. Enter Rinoa, a childhood dream of mine, being noticed by the nice cute girl, and here Squall kept messing it up trying to act cool. There's a bit more there, but we'll get there. I like that Squall has his flaws so readily noticeable to the player. Thankfully, he also has given time to show some quality leader material and show hints of compassion, like a pivotal scene near the end of the first disc. Squall is driven to shut off his feelings and just do the job because that's easier than confronting his past and how that truly hampered his psyche. Thankfully, he gets to let out some of that pent-up anger right at the beginning of this game in this super cool opening scene, where we come to find out it's just a sparring session. That turns some people off, but to me it shows how much this means to Squall. To him, it's a fight for his life, this goal to be the best, and let's say these sort of experiences leave a mark on him. This taste in how things are shown and perceived in the overall storytelling aspect and display can be seen in Squall's character. His design-wise, his curt personality meant for us to feel like he's a non-leader type, but we know he has those feelings inside. We see it on the screen all the time. I love his personality sometimes. And I like that we get to see him struggle with confrontation, especially when Rinoa is there just throwing a wrench in that system to confront him on those faults. There are so many elements bringing Rinoa and Squall together and pushing them away that I find their story mirrors life in so many ways. Rinoa shows up in Squall's life when he's had some major changes, dealing with new responsibilities, and she's not even there for him, and yet she's drawn to him. Rinoa says what's on her mind, and sometimes her body follows along, like this little scene. Gosh, I love this so much, especially when you know the context. She's so different than Squall, and he's actually forced to have personal contact, which he likes to avoid at all costs because touching leads to feelings, and feelings means he's got to confront his past. And Rinoa loves to dig that out of him. And what I love about Rinoa is that she has her own issues. She can't read a room sometimes, she gets involved when she shouldn't, coming up with a new plan that may contradict what is happening in the moment. She also has a sad past, like most of our crew here, and she lets personal connections and feelings cloud her judgment and even lets it dictate her way of life. She comes off as amateur in some instances, even though this whole cast of characters are kind of that in certain ways, but she truly has more of those moments, kind of the punching bag for our more leader-like characters. I think a lot of the instances that she's in has genuine feels and kind of how you would expect someone to react to the world around her. Not everything meshes, and that's alright because that's just how life works most of the time. Now, there are times where I think the plot actually gets in the way of this relationship in not so great ways, which I'll touch on later. But if you don't like Rinoa or you don't like Squall, this is going to be a barrier for you enjoying this story. The other characters, Quistis, Zell, Selphie, and Irving, well, they're fun characters. They each have their own little quirks. Quistis is the hot, failed instructor that is part leader and part trying to pick herself up from her own failures, while also having a cool fan club. Zell is a hothead who is in a love-hate relationship with hot dogs, and he just really thinks he's cooler than he is. But he's got passion, and he checks in with his mom, and I appreciate that. Selphie is just a ball of fun and also tries to get Squall to loosen up and brings a different dynamic from being a transfer student into the mix. She's pretty darn adorable. Irving, well, he sums it up quite clearly here. He's the new cog in the culmination of one of the best endings of an act in a game, and also the catalyst for one of the most divisive turning points in a plot. A lot to unpack later on. All these characters have their moments, but they take a back seat compared to Squall and Rinoa, which I do believe was the right choice, but this is also because of plot reasons that will be explained later. I think for what we get and what they wanted to tie in the overall plot elements, I think they succeeded in coming up with a cast of characters that I want to spend my time with. I have my favorites. Quistis and Irving are at the bottom, Selfie's in the middle, Zell, Squall, and Rinoa are in the top for me. But I think these are all good to great characters, and that's all I can ask for. They don't always have to have intricate backstories or crazy character arcs for me to have some enjoyment coming away at the end of the experience. We have some other reoccurring characters with our fellow gunblade-wielding bully Cypher and his little cohort of buddies Raijin and Fujin. Cypher is set up to be Squall's rival, and he has a fairly interesting arc that is more so the opposite of Squall's in some sense, or at least in the way of thinking. Cypher lets the past control him, but he uses it as a catalyst to shape his future in a more optimistic way. I honestly think he has some wonderful character moments throughout the game, but I do have some qualms with how they didn't go far enough with his character in certain aspects. But I think he's a good springboard for Squall and a few of the other characters, and he seems like someone you could come across in life even with some of his ridiculous sayings. But I like having these reoccurring characters that are going to show up in pivotal parts of the story. And speaking of that, the true standout that I wish time wasn't such a crunch is Laguna and company. Laguna is such a goofy, wonderful man. I love everything about this dude. I remember being enamored with him when I was a kiddo, and that has not wavered. It's only strengthened with this playthrough. I mean, I've had him as my PSN avatar for a long time, so it's fair to say he's had a strong impact on me. I'm sure this could be jarring for players, but I remember loving the mystery and how this was going to tie into the overall present plot I was dealing with. Plus, I just like the whole getting knocked out and waking up as a different character. Super cool back then, and super cool still to this day. And I mean, I get to be a dude with a machine gun shooting monsters with a freaking amazing battle song. I was going to be hooked even before Laguna's personality shined through. Laguna, for the most part, is the exact opposite of Squall, and that's what makes it so fun to jump into his scenarios. It is a completely different vibe, and we're going to different locales as well. Everything about this is enticing to me if you like this sort of storytelling. Laguna, though, man is he fun, obtuse, and just makes for a truly amazingly bad leader in the best of ways. He doesn't want to work, he can't read the room, thinks he's cooler than he is, a little Zell there, and realizes that he might not be doing what he wants to be doing, but fate seems to keep throwing him into situations he just can't escape from. And I think he has a pretty wonderful arc about wrong timing and the struggles of moving on while not confronting your past. A little bit of Squall in there too. And it's so beautifully mirrored in Squall's life. I wish the developers had the time to even add more of his scenarios into the game. Supposedly it was going to be more so a 50-50 split, which would have been just wild. But we still got the major story beats in this final product, and I'm happy with Laguna's antics. His fellow military buddies, Kyros and Ward, are pretty awesome too. They each play into Laguna's antics and also call him out, but they don't really try hard to follow orders and kind of go along for the ride. It's pretty interesting to see how the dynamic of these three's lives changed throughout the runtime of this game. It's one of my favorite aspects, and there is some emotional moments when you realize what the passage of time does to their relationship as a whole, and I do love that they are pivotal to some aspects of the plot. And also just a quick note on the writing, you know this game has good character writing when I know who each of these characters are from these dialogue boxes alone. No gestures or names to help me out, that's pretty sweet. And I do want to take a moment to really praise its use of the dialogue bar. That's such a weird thing to say, but it pops up in different locations, it's all over the place, and its effect is used expertly in some scenes to convey feelings and tone. That's a hard thing to conceptualize, direct, and execute, but I think Final Fantasy VIII does it super well. Boring look aside, this is more than just a simple block of text letting us know who's talking. It conveys a sense of personality that you might not necessarily even think on it more than a mere passing moment, but as someone who's played a lot of games in the genre, especially before voice acting occurs, it's done so well in this game. Also, I just like the diverse cast of looking characters. Look at this lineup, and it's just wonderful to see, not to mention wonderfully dressed villains looking awesome as well. Speaking of looks, I find the design of the overall characters are a conglomeration of fantastic to just like, this is fine. Like Squall, I think he looks so freaking cool to me. He's got some extra belts, the white fur on his jacket really pops, has the coolest weapon with the gun blade, and I like that he has brown hair. Totally not because I have brown hair. hey, we can all be biased here. Rinoa's dress design is cool to me as well. I love how long and flowy it is down the back, just not something you normally see. Plus her pinwheel weapon is very unique in the RPG space, a not so boomerang. The other side is Irvin. Let's just put a cowboy in here and really not change much. It's just kind of boring if you think about it. Selphie has this cute design down well, even if her outfit is also just kind of plain and boring, though I do like it. She's in the middle category of a good design because the color pop, she's basically wearing overalls mixed with a skirt, which is kind of a cool idea. And of course, because she freaking uses nunchucks with coiffed hair. Just a simple overall design that does work even though it's boring in some aspects, it just meshes well. I do like Zell's design, even if I think he's pretty goofy, oversized jorts with crazy blonde chicken hair, and you just get to be pummeled by a guy with a face tattoo. It's just a weird choice for a character, but somehow I enjoy it because the oddest part, I can't see Zell in any other design. This just works somehow. Quistis, I'm a fan of orange, so I like the outfit. She's more so on the plain side, which is wild to say with a whip user and such. I think she worked well in her instructor outfit more so, but that just could be the school vibe feeling that nostalgia sometimes hangs on to, and potentially other scenarios.
Okie dokie.
But this is a good design overall, if nothing that exciting. But my gosh, that portrait, holy moly, does that ooze personality right there. Love it. Laguna, majestic hair, has a gun, cool outfit, and eventually wears flip-flops. This man is untouchable in design. What I truly like about Final Fantasy VIII's characters and the gaggle of other NPCs and recurring characters is how varied they are. Some of the dialogue you get from NPCs are just throwaway antics that I think are oh so good. Of course you have your expedition dump type NPCs, but a lot of these townsfolk feel like they're actually everyday people that have to deal with this messed up world of monsters and child soldiers and the looming threat of a magical woman potentially messing up their everyday lives. A lot seem to just be living their lives in the most relatable way possible, while some shady shit is going on around them. It's an aspect that never got old when exploring the new towns you'll come across. I like when an RPG gives me reason to talk to folks, even if I technically don't gain anything out of it minus a peek into this world that the creators dreamed up. You don't have to talk to everyone, but just take your time. Enjoy it. Let's set the stage for all these characters and what they will be doing in this Final Fantasy VIII world. Right away, it's an explosive visual feast with that opening cinematic after you press start game, only for it to completely slow down to a crawl with waking up from sleep. This is Final Fantasy VIII, a complete juxtaposition of tone and showcase from time to time. But I like this more subtle building to events. It's not for everyone and surely doesn't have the strongest hooks, but if you're treating the hook of being that opening cinematic, which I think you should because it's a blend of future happenings and what's going on right now, then I think this is a strong start. The bombastic music backing that opening cinematic then blends into this serene, barely any audio going on, only ambient noises, is such a shift in feel, and I love this wonderful job of showing us how this game is going to switch up its tone. No longer the dark, moody scene of the fight with Cypher and the crescendo of the music piece, now you're in this pleasant, quaint room with the breeze coming in, having the drapes in the pre-rendered background moving, and without the music and the colorful palette tones, this really sets the mood. Even if this initial first scene isn't exciting, paired with what you just witnessed, the stark difference is to me. This is the start of your journey with Squall, and I'm actually going to do a different approach just because Final Fantasy VIII is different, so I figured I'd be different a little bit too. I'm going to read the prologue from the manual to set up this game because I think it's pretty fascinating because the prologue itself sets up one of the major mysteries this game has for us. Now, there are some light spoilers in this, Maybe? Can they be called spoilers if it's written in the manual? I'm not sure, but if you don't want to know nothing concrete of the plot, then maybe don't watch this part, but it's nothing huge. That open CG basically spells most of this out. At the forefront of a rising tide of violence brought on by Galbadia's war declaration is a Seed cadet named Squall Leonhardt. Serious to a fault, Squall has earned himself the reputation of being a lone wolf. A chance encounter with the free-spirited Rinoa Hartley, however, turns his universe upside down. Having thrived on discipline, Squall finds Rinoa's carefree attitude fascinating. Yet there is no time to ponder these thoughts, for the job of dealing with the sorceress behind Galbadia's irrational hostility has fallen to Seed and Squall. That's the first big block of text, and there's a decent amount to unpack there. We know this is going to be about two people meeting that are very different, but one of them doesn't have time for the other. A nice call out to a lot of the emotional beats to a certain character, and the main conflict is being started by Galbadia, a country or something we can infer, but there's a sorceress involved. Maybe our clad in black lady from the opening cinematic, perhaps? Continuing on. In Final Fantasy VIII, the player will assume the roles of Squall and Laguna to advance the story. At times, Squall is known to fall into a dreamlike state. It is during these periods that he encounters Laguna. What destiny awaits these two characters? At what point does the story between the two cross? Who is Laguna? Now, those are some very interesting bits, especially having this other character, Laguna, being so up and center. Even the image that comes with the prologue is showing them side by side as if they are both the main protagonists. I can answer the last question. Who is Laguna? Laguna is the best character. I love me some Laguna. So with that in mind, the plot is set up. Squall has to get ready for a live exam to become a Seed member, which is a sect of Balam Garden's military. Balam Garden is a school to train up soldiers, and they all happen to be young kids or teens, child soldiers, you know. Without spoiling what the mission is or the overall impact it has on the world and the plot, eventually we get a run-in with that girl from this prologue, Rinoa, who has a big impact on Squall, and the ball truly starts rolling with this new mission, and a very, very exciting last arc to Disc 1. The crazy part is how quickly paced the first disc is, which I suppose you won't even know where it would end if you're playing this in the modern way. It's basically whenever the game asks you to save after a big event. That's where originally you would swap out the next disc and get that cool, artwork to tell you this. Man, I'm old. You'll definitely know when it was supposed to happen on the original format this game came on. And as long as you don't get distracted by cards, it's really, really hard not to get distracted by cards. I think you'll find that Final Fantasy VIII is paced pretty well. As a whole on the plot side, without getting into all the mysteries, right at this moment beyond mere mention, what I do like is I find a lot of it believable in the parameters they built. And what I mean by that is the way they tell this story is it kind of reinforces itself the more you dig into the game. An earlier mission makes a heck of a lot more sense if you've talked to certain NPCs or looked at the schoolroom terminal about something that's been referenced that happened not too long ago in the past. Young me didn't get why they were making a huge deal about the comms tower. Adult me understands that it's pretty cool to have your lore tucked away in menus and NPC dialogue. Versus a lot of the time whatever characters on screen will be just start exposition dumping. This kind of avoids that. If you've played a lot of modern games, characters will just say stuff you're like, that makes no context to the situation right now. Of course my character would know this, but this is just your NPC or your character blabbering on about something to let you know that this is important to the plot. Now the flip side to this is because they hide some stuff away in other ways and be a little bit more obscure, I don't think this is an optimal way for a player to experience this most times. But with how odd Final Fantasy VIII is, I actually really like this execution. Though I do think this could have benefited from a time or two where one of the main characters comments on something a bit sooner just to give us a heads up on how these things are going to be connected. I think some of the more what the heck moments could have used a bit more coaxing to be mentioned in the main quest line to buff out some of the rougher edges where things kind of come out of nowhere. But the wonderful thing is there are so many little seeds to later plot developments if you know where to look. This game does a wonderful job foreshadowing so much of its reveals, it's kind of nuts on a replay, and I do love it for that. even if it's not so much a user-friendly first-time experience. I understood most of the major plot points when I was a kid, but I was definitely not as dialed in on the plot as I am now. Even with all the setup and foreshadowing, there are elements that seem thrown together or shakily put together for convenience sake in a, let's say, almost super high coincidence that all these elements work out for people to get out of certain situations. Life can be about chance meetings and things just being there, so who knows? These aren't littered throughout the entire plot. There are just a few that make me scratch my head thinking, well, maybe you could have gotten to this point with a bit more believability, but they also created this giant, crazy, complex game in about 2 years of development time, so sometimes I'll give them a little bit of a break. You really can't see the seams per se, which is good. If you were to tell me that Laguna had even a bigger part of the story, I can see how that would fit, but I also don't feel like I was cheated on the experience we were granted in the final product. And I think right off the bat, after that CGI is done, almost, 2 minutes afterwards, alright, mystery person, okay, I like that. A bit later, some NPCs mention, or if you've gone on your first live mission, something that happened 17 years ago. And then you have Laguna. He's in the prologue, I see him, and how are these dreamlike states, as the prologue says, going to fit into the narrative, and what's his role in all of this? Some of the mysteries are pretty blatant. There's an awkwardness between Sid and some of the Garden faculty. Some are more hidden until revealed later on, like Guardian Forces or a small line from Sid. Finally, the Gunblade Specialist. I think Final Fantasy VIII has a marvelous way of putting enough intrigue in the mysteries to really push you through that first disc, paired with just an excellent number of intriguing missions. I think the reveals of each mystery range from awesome to what the heck was the point of that? Without spoilers, the tension of Faculty and Sid, kind of a letdown. The Gunblade Specialist angle, really freaking cool. Laguna, pretty awesome in most cases, and the connection to one of the overall themes of the game is well done. What happened 17 years ago? Cool concept, I like it, especially when you look back at some of the other foreshadowing. Oh boy. I would say a lot of people I've talked to about Final Fantasy VIII, they either think one of two ways, that its story falls apart after Disc 1, and has some dumb reveals, more on that later, or it's just convoluted and towards the back half of the game takes a turn for the worst. Putting my bias aside for loving this game as a kiddo, I can see where some of the criticism comes from, though if you pay attention to certain aspects of the lore and what people are talking about, a lot of this stuff doesn't come out of left field. And some of the peculiarities of the decisions that some, let's say for people who should be wiser, do, is all explained. It just might take a long while to get there. The story does go in a completely different direction than what Disc 1 and half of Disc 2 throws at you. Actually, almost all of Disc 2 goes the way you think it would, minus some wrinkles of revelations that happen. But honestly, I think most of the directional switches end up working for me. It is, at first blush, a convoluted story that doesn't present all the necessary information right in your face. To its benefit and its detriment, that is Final Fantasy VIII in a nutshell story-wise. You are either going to enjoy this type of storytelling, or you're not. Not everything hits, but oh boy is it special in certain aspects when it's just firing on all cylinders. With the music and these still gorgeous cutscenes, it's a beautiful thing to behold. And I will say, the ending is fantastic for this all over the place adventure. Whether you actually get there, well, time will tell. Or maybe you've already been there and you're seeing this now to relive a semblance of it. Well, let's do that with getting into the nitty-gritty of a lot of the big overall mysteries and plot spoilers. So check the timestamps down below if you want to experience this game without it being spoiled. Jump to the next section and I'll let you know if this is worth your time. Now, I don't always do things this way, but for Final Fantasy VIII, I'm going to go disc by disc this time around. Like, there's a bunch of moments I could jump to, but for me, I want to encapsulate each disc before moving on to the next big moment, because there are so many little small ones sprinkled in here. Another benefit to doing it this way is I'll be discussing themes and character arcs throughout, so it won't just be a beat-by-beat retelling, and I will be skipping past some elements, because Well, there's a lot, but I do want to be able to talk about the character arcs and what little breadcrumbs are left along the way to see whether character arcs work or they don't. I alluded to it before the spoiler section started. Disc 1 is so great. There are some things that you have to either shrug off or you have to put yourself in the lens of the world of Final Fantasy VIII that they have crafted, but man, is it so good. Plenty of people have mentioned out there on the internet, in podcast form or whatever, how the heck is Selphie a Special Forces member? Why would children be doing this? Why is Cid so forceful? Most of those things can be answered with the theme of fate, which we will be talking about a lot in this retrospective. But these are children and teens going to war. I expect there to be people like Selphie in this world. It's not that far of a stretch when you look at it. There are going to be psychos like Cypher, and there will be more closed-off people like Squall. A whole gaggle of people when the world you know is training to become soldiers, and that is your life. So is it a stretch that Goofball Selphie could be in the elite cast of Seed members? Mercenary group? Yeah, but when all of them are kids to begin with, I don't think it's that big of a stretch, to be honest. Plus, Cid needs these kids no matter what, so he's going to get everybody to at least try to pass, and apparently Selphie was good at being a messenger. After that wonderful cutscene, there's a lot of things going on here that are baked into this, we'll call it the tutorial area, starting off area, Bellam Garden. I'm not going to get into all the specifics, but I just really love the feel of this place. I love Selphie running into you at the very beginning of the game, and you already get that choice of, should I take her on a tour or should I not? Or even at the very beginning of the game when you look at the terminal, and one of the options for you to pick for dialogue is, what a pain. It says so much about Squall as a character in the beginning of this, especially if you give the tour to Selphie. His way of acting and his dialogue is so great. But outside of the forced tutorials, I really like this beginning place. Going out and your first mission of seeing Ifrit and all that, and learning the game. And of course, spreading the gospel about Triple Triad. There's so much I could talk about that, but this opening area, just masterful. Masterful is the wrong word. It feels, there's so much that happens, so much reactions to things that go along the story, where NPCs say different things. You have the major side quest with Zell if you go to the library a bunch. There is just so many aspects. But I will be jumping to the live section, your first real live mission as potential seed candidates. This thing freaking rules. It's well-paced, it's very interesting back-to-back fights, and this is where, if you read the terminal, you know that the broadcasting has been cut off from the world, because little Michael was very confused why it was so important here. But I like the basis that this mission structure tells us, which will be a gripe, but also a positive. You are told what you're going to be doing in these cool, like, mission briefing style things. The problem is sometimes they go a little bit long in a later example of the train section, but we have our mission. We're getting little character development along the way, the banter between Cypher and Zell and Squall. All those little things keep me entertained before even the big bombastic mission. And that's a bombastic start to that mission. And in the culmination of it, we get defying orders. So Cypher's showing him who he is and his dream. And we have the communication tower come online, the importance of that. We then have a crazy, wild boss that interrupts our current boss fight, only to then have a time section where we're trying to leave this mission while being chased by another boss. There's so many mechanics thrown in here, which I love. One, it's raising the tension with the time limit, which you already kind of had a little bit of that with the Fire Cavern dungeon, only for it to culminate into a glorious CGI of Quistis just taking out this guy with a machine gun. Man, what a crazy main mission to start this game off with. So we got the mystery of the 17 years. We got a hint at Cypher's motivation as a character. We have Zell being the hothead, a new party member, and we have Squall and his lack of feelings and showing and just trying to get through this mission, basically. And then we pass as seed candidates. We become seed, Selphie, myself, Squall, Zell, and then the random dude. And you have Cid with that same, finally, a Gunblade specialist. That's going to come. They're already planting the seed right there about destiny and what it means for Cid in this whole cast of things. But it's so early, so little. I love it. I love that foreshadowing. But one of my favorite moments is when you walk out and you come into the hallway and it's Cypher who begins applauding us. Which says so much about his character without using words. You know, we know he's kind of a hothead like Zell in a different sort of way, a little bit more psychotic sort of way. But this shows that he does care, and he's willing to stand out to show his appreciation for his fellow Garden members. And what I mean about pacing, we go from that crazy event to another big CGI moment. I don't know how you were, but anytime a game, an RPG, I looked forward to these moments. I wanted the big cutscenes. That was my main drive for playing these RPGs back then. I loved it so much. And we get this absolutely beautiful dance scene between another new character just showing up, the one that we've heard about in the prologue, and we get this nice circular storytelling with some of this imagery here, but then it's also going to show up at the end of the game, and we saw it at the very beginning in that opening cutscene. Rinoa actually gets Squall onto the dance floor. Think about that for a moment. This is a guy who cannot be bothered by anybody. We just saw Zell try to shake his hand again, and what does Squall do? He just drinks. He just ignores him. So that shows how much that Rinoa is a catalyst for the change that Squall is going to be going through. And I love that you can tell Squall is just not enjoying this, and then Rinoa sticks out her tongue when they bump into somebody, and obviously they get together to have a really nice moment over the fireworks. And this also leads to another jab from Quistis when they meet out on the balcony. But let's go there because this is such a polarizing talking point. And I don't think some people think about it in both sides of the spectrum on Squall and Quistis. Go talk to a wall. When we get our way through the training sector after this long day of being a seed, that's one of the main sticklers. When Quistis is confessing how she's feeling, all that, we say go talk to a wall. It's a super harsh thing to say to someone, but the crazy part is, replaying this again, I kind of understand why Squall reacted the way that he did. And I never thought I would be giving him more leniency, but here I am. Okay, so Quistis knows Squall. At the very beginning of the game, she starts finishing his sentences, right? That's one of the first looks into her character and his character, how he just thinks and how they operate. She's his instructor, or was. The reason she can finish his sentences is because she knows him so well. She understands that he doesn't like to talk about his emotions, and for the most part, would like to be left alone. So you know this young man so well. So after this crazy long mission, this dance party, she orders you to trapeze through the training facility of the garden, go sit at an overlook, and make him listen to you vent about what's happening in her life. And when Quistis starts talking to him about all of this, he is pretty upfront with all of how he's feeling. I don't want to talk about it. She wants him to just listen, but I don't know, it's pretty bold of her to drag him around just so she can vent. I get it, they have this relationship where it seems like it should be a back and forth, but she knows him. How he responded, not the best. But this is a man who is deeply troubled with his own feelings, so I don't think he can even begin to know how to react to this, especially with the way Quistis is setting this whole thing up. And we get a nice peek into his persona as well. I don't want to carry anyone's burden. Again, showing he doesn't want to be the leader, and he really doesn't want to be in the situation he is. Is he still kind of heartless at this stage? Absolutely. But I do love this scene actually because of how much it says about these two characters. And it's also the beginning of Quistis looking inward retrospectively, which she comments later on. We don't get many of these moments for the other characters, so it's nice that we have such a strong emotional beacon right here at the beginning of the game. And what I like about the writing approach to this is because it will be Quistis that actually turns and is more Squall in a future conversation, with bringing up some harsh realities. So even if I don't 100% agree with Quistis, don't 100% agree with Squall, I think this does a very good job of showcasing these characters and what they find important. Squall doesn't like to share his feelings. Quistis obviously does. And right after, we get another piece of foreshadowing, and they do it so soon I forgot how early it was, and I love it. The girl at the very beginning of this game is in the training center, and when she sees Quistis, she calls her a nickname. It's so quick. It's a beautiful setup to a very divisive story revelation later on. Whether you like the reveal later or not, I commend them for throwing this in here so nicely. Plus, it's so early. And let's jump to the mystery of Laguna and what the heck is going on in this so weird and so random, especially if you didn't read the prologue with your copy of the game. But even side note, it's still nothing like I would have expected. It's a dream world, yes, but when I hear it going into a dream state, I think abstract and not as concrete as this one. When I first played this, I was so thrown off because I don't think I read the prologue. When that eerie sound happens and we all start passing out, I was like, oh, somebody's kidnapping us. But no, we wake up in a total different era. I'm controlling different characters. What the heck is going on? And everything about this part is so good. The dialogue boxes, the confusion, our characters talking through and hearing the thoughts, and then Laguna actually responding to some of them. But man, Laguna, your first taste of Laguna is almost the first taste. It's him parking his vehicle in the middle of the road and like, you can't park here, and he just does it. That whimsical nature of how he operates his life is really set through. I mean, he decided to abandon this fight, the war he's in, the battle he's in, to go drink and watch the girl he has a crush on. I mean, that is peak character writing right there. And this one snippet, I like that we can venture around Delian City if we want to as these characters, and we get to go to this later on, which I think is really cool. But this initial dream sequence sets up so much of the lore and why things are going to happen the way they do, and how important it is between these characters and how it relates to Squall and Rinoa later on. And I remember thinking how awkward this scene was when he was up there, and I remember me as a kid, and I still kind of have this feeling now. Laguna keeps talking to Julia. I'm like, dude, you're up in her hotel room. Shut up, let her speak. And the time just goes away. And I always felt so bad at this point. But there's so much character work here between the Kyros and Ward messing with Laguna and then just leaving and letting him have his moment. And of course, Laguna getting cramps going up to the piano. I love this scene so much. And even if I was confused when I was younger, I don't know the total impact this would have, but it left an impact on me because I was really excited to know more about this. Especially when you wake up and, Squall has his great quote of I dreamt I was a moron. But I love the musical tones that introduce itself as you're slowly starting to figure out that you all had this same dream. Thought that was so cool. They do this twice in this disc where they shelf this. They're like, let's not talk about it now. I would probably talk about it. I don't know. But I get it. Squall wants to focus on the mission. He doesn't want to think too deeply about things, what's going on in his life. So it kind of makes sense from a character standpoint. And this is the next introduction of Rinoa again in Squall's life. And I love this scene. One of my favorite things is how she jumps into Squall's arms right away. And he doesn't react how you think he would. He sets her back down. He's like, whoa, but he doesn't get mad about it because again, just the subtle hints that maybe he thinks this is a little bit different. And I always did like that when she leaves the car, the train car, and then she comes running back in, and that's when you enter her name. And I think this is another great mission that they set up. It is overly explained. How I said I really like the cadence of here's the mission. Here, now go act it out, and it's going to be this pretty cool CGI work, and it's a mission-based structure that I actually really like about this game. Well, would have helped this part if you did it more like the Mission Impossible setup, like explaining what's going to happen while also having it happen in real time, cutting back and forth. For now, it's fine the way it is, but it just could have been a little bit better. I like the high stakes of this mission. You're kidnapping a president, which is kind of insane for stake-wise of what we were doing before. Only for it to fall off the rails. The body double president knew what was happening. And I remember when I was a kid scanning them, and I forget what it says exactly, but I was like, they're zombie. Now it's known on the Son. I've played so many RPGs. Like, of course, the undead character is weak to health magic. But I remember giving them a Phoenix Down when I was a kid, and it worked. I was like, holy crap, that is awesome. And of course, I still do that to this day, and I did it on this playthrough. And now we have to recuperate this mission about, okay, he's obviously here in Timber to make an announcement. Well, we're going to try and hijack that announcement. And this is where some of that Rinoa naivety kind of comes into play, where she's like, we're just going to insert and do this. And when you get up to this intersection, they're not an intersection, they're meeting on a bridge. You can consider that an intersection, I don't know, or a walkway. This is where Squall like kind of lays out like, yeah, we will do this job, but he's not really game for it, but he's willing to do it. And she kind of gets mad and runs off. But here's where we see some scrolling text, and it looks like there might be sentences there. Interesting. And even before we keep going with the story, I do want to stop, and I like that Timber has so many little things that you can explore, where Laguna used to work. I really like the kids staring out the window, looking back into the back alley. Another cool shot of the direction and just how things go, and just the kids being kids. I don't know, I just love that aspect. And another aspect I do like, going back into the main story, is when the broadcast comes online and the guy is doing like, oh my gosh, we're online. I love that he's so surprised that it actually works. Again, it fuels that tidbit that it's been so long since anything like this has happened. 17 years, it hasn't been working. And then only for Cypher to crash the party. I was like, holy crap, what the heck is going on? Quistis jumps on there, ordering you to abandon your mission and come help her. The stakes just keep going up. And I love you have even more character moments once we get up there, where Zell hasn't totally realized that he's making a mistake about the trajectory of what he's talking about to this now captured Delian president from Cypher, and where he like yells at Zell, basically be quiet. And I love this moment because a little bit of his anger is coming out. But then this scene just gets better because we transition to another shot where again, the camera angle is just different. We get this eerie sound that's going on and our first in-game look at the sorceress. And the color tone that they choose for this, making it a little bit more ethereal. She does this crazy magic stuff to make us drop down to the ground, and she steals Cypher away from us. And it's such a strong impression for this person, which we assume is the villain. It makes her feel eerie and strong, because we don't know at the time that she's acting brash because of who she is now, but we'll get there. It's expertly put together when it's just like, what the frick is going on? And I like that the consequences of this scene still have reverberations, right? We know Cypher's gone, so there's something that's going to happen with that. And Zell let it slip that we're from the garden, so his character's acting so dejected for a very long time, which will then lead into another character moment interaction that I really like. We have the confrontation of Rinoa telling Squall that he's not being a good leader. And again, I love that she challenges him in that way. I feel like this is one of the catalysts for other characters to start expressing more of their feelings to Squall, even if he isn't outright accepting of Rinoa's, judgment right now. But it just shows you that she is not going to act like the other party member. She's going to be her own woman, and she's going to tell it to you straight. And Squall basically gives her nothing. We're going to get interrupted with another Laguna section, which I love this section. Oh my gosh. One, you're in something that will come into key to later in the game, which is just amazing. And it has this crazy intrigue of being this spectacular looking place. It has these bright greens and yellows in this crystal almost looking like structure. Hey, Final Fantasy having crystals. Holy crap. And then on top of that, you're fighting these wild looking soldiers. And the icing on the cake is just knowing that we get to go back here. I love an important locale that we visit more than once, and this one ends up becoming that. But it's the end of this part. When Ward and Kyros barely have any life left in them, Laguna looks over the edge of this cliff like, oh, we can take that boat home. and just chucks his friends off the cliff. And then when he goes and looks down at it, I gotta read it word for word. You guys sure have guts. You know how high this cliff is? The ramification, like, he just chucked his friends down there without even a second thought. And then he tries to casually go down, slips, falls, and then it's the end of the dream section. So, it's so good. It's so good. Oh, and on top of that, you do have this nice touching moment with Ward as his voice is starting to fade out. And you can guess that these dots in between is him struggling to say it. It was fun, you guys. Laguna, Kyros, it was fun. Man, that little bit of dialogue just says so much. The friends, the comrades in battle, and just they're his drinking buddies, and it was fun because he thinks he's gonna die probably. And yeah, it's surprising that he survived this fall. As I've replayed this game, there are so many instances where just one little sentence from a character just fills me with so much emotion. Maybe it's because of everything I've been through in my life, and just thinking about it and relating. And it's crazy to me that one sentence can invoke so much feelings for me. For me, this scene, it's just, masterful. And then we get this whirlwind of emotions where they think Cypher has been executed. That's what they've been hearing. And that mood shift is so complete. And even people like Zell are like, I didn't like the guy, but he's one of us. And Rinoa is starting to retell, Cypher was such a nice guy to her. And the whole time we have Squall just, you can tell he's being uncomfortable and he hates being in this moment where people are talking about Cypher in the past. And he's wondering, will they talk about him like this in the future? And we get our second freak out moment from Squall. So we have Squall freaking out at Zell for messing up, but now he's letting his inner thoughts spill out kind of at random. But the nice touch is it's Quistis that stands up and realizes that something's wrong with Squall, because again, she knows him. And he just yells, I won't have it, just kind of out of the blue. Zell's super surprised. Selfie's like, oh, you're mad at something? Again, they can't relate to Squall, and they don't know him as much as Quistis. I'm not having anybody talk about me in the past tense, and then rushes out of the room. What I like about this is it's showing so much dynamics between this group. Obviously, Quistis is a little bit more connected with Squall. Rinoa's just trying to share her feelings again, and Squall is letting it bottle up, but it's finally peaked out. His first crack in kind of his, lonely visage, the lone wolf he's trying to be. I think they do miss the point of having no one respond to this outburst, but at the same time, I think as kids, you're realizing that Cypher's dead and he's thinking about that, so you can kind of relate. I just wish there was some connective tissue between this scene and the next scene we'll get. And like this, we're on to the last arc, basically, of this disc. We get a new party member, Mr. Cowboy Irvin, and what I really like about this scene, after rewatching it and re-experiencing it and knowing what happens later on, he walks up and down, staring at each one of us that are standing there. And from the body posture from all of our characters, they have no reaction. When, if we know down the line, I bet this must be doing mind fuckery with Irvin. Because at this point, he has all the memories of us, and we're not reacting. So when Galbadia's headmaster Martin says his full name, and he's walking there, no one's reacting. I don't blame him for standing there and be like, hey, why don't you guys remember me? Because he's probably like, is there something wrong? Are these not the people from my childhood? I really like this scene. Again, I think with the result, if you look at this, it could have been handled slightly different, but I actually really like this part because it doesn't totally cement that it couldn't be this future for these characters. I think they need to drop a little bit more hints here and there. And when you build upon this scene in particular, as well as a little nickname for Quistis by that girl, I think it's pretty cool. And our next big trajectory for the plot is we're going to assassinate that crazy powerful lady we saw. It's so good how that you can just feel the shift in weight when Squall announces what they're going to do. And we get a little character development from Irvin where he picks the party. He's like, oh, I'm going to take Rinoa and Selphie. This party looks great. And I love, if you accept it, you get a really funny scene. Squall basically doesn't understand women. Selphie gets an outburst before she plays along with Rinoa. Rinoa starts hugging our new party member real close. And Quist just cannot believe this shit. That one, they're going off, and Squall is letting them. But then she has a bit of goofiness with it where she plays it up and leans on Squall. Squall's just like, what the heck? Please don't touch me. I'm not stable for this. And Zell just continues to be his hothead, calling Irvin a loser and being competitive again, saying well, we have to get there before they do now. And for the scene I picked on my playthrough was where I put Zell on the team with Irvin, and he's like, what? And Squall's like, I balance out the team. And Zell's like, oh, I'll watch over. I'll show him some seed manners. And he's like, see you later, alligator. And then Zell gets all pissed off and runs away. I love these fun little character interactions. Yeah, the characters aren't that deep when you look at everything that plays out, but man, are these fun. And I'm going to jump to Quistis freaking out on Rinoa. This is the scene I kind of alluded to where Quistis is now basically reprimanding Rinoa for coming up with this plan and interjecting into it right now when they have this assassination plan already coming down the pipeline from their higher ups. And you can tell that Rinoa has not figured out the details on how to execute this plan, where before she planned the abduction of the train, obviously. So she has the wherewithal to get this thing done, but it's not the right time. And at this point in the story, I think Rinoa had to hear this, but it emboldened her, actually, and after she got sad. And she knows she's going to get locked in this room, and it says a lot about her relationship with her father, and Zell brings that up even, too. Now, a thing Final Fantasy VIII likes to do, which I don't like, is characters having the absolute worst time to change something in their plans or bring something up. We will get another major one, but Quistis reflects and realizes she was too harsh on Rinoa. I like that as a character arc for her. She realizes that, she probably thinks of how she felt when Squall said the wall comment. It's like, okay, maybe I should do it. Well, you can wait to apologize, girl. Come on. You do not need to go right now back to Rinoa and apologize. You're in the middle of a mission. I get that this will add tension to the mission because of what's going to happen. They're going to get locked in the room and all that jazz. But I think they could have come up with something else because at the end of the day, I like the feeling of tension. I just don't like the catalyst for it. Regardless, you get to control Rinoa by herself, and she's climbing up all the boxes to get to the sorceress. And she has this device she thinks that will suppress the sorceress's power. What I like about this is it really plays into her naivety in this moment. Plus, we get some excellent cutscene work and some creepy Rinoa getting knocked out / kind of entranced. Opening cutscene is coming to fruition, a look at the future. And again, even if I don't like the catalyst, I like this setup. We have another element. Rinoa is where the assassination is going to then take place. Now, something that isn't explained very well, which I think I know the reason for why they aren't affected, but everyone at this gathering seems to cheer and applaud the vile things coming out of Adea's mouth during her speech. If you talk to people later in this city, in Deling, you can connect the dots that they were put under a trance, basically. A trance-like state. I think that doesn't show up in dialogue until disc 3, which is kind of crazy, but it makes sense why they would be celebrating afterwards with the parade if they're under this spell, because Adea just killed somebody in front of everybody. My guess to the reason why Squall and Irvin aren't affected is because of our guardian forces, but I don't know, and it's a little shaky. There could be some other things, like they've already confronted sorceresses in the future, and maybe they're immune to it now in this weird time loop kind of way. So I wish I had a little bit more explanation for that. And another tension building thing that I don't really love is Adea, another cool cutscene where the statues come to life and they look like they're attacking Rinoa. And it takes us so long to get to Rinoa. So why aren't these creatures immediately killing her? Those are the type of little plot things I don't love. And if I have enough of those, I start to think less of the story as a whole. But right now, whatever. But one thing that is cool, the Delling City music track that plays is called Under Her Control. I mean, that's another notch in that theory, which is pretty cool that the way they hint at it. I do think the parade stuff is so cool, though. Again, you get to run around as the cutscenes are taking place. Your characters are moving around. There's a lot of tension going on. You're trying to get to Rinoa. Again, not the greatest tension, but it is what it is. Because you get a nice point of Rinoa being like, thank you so much. I'm so scared, yada, yada. And Squall's like, all right, let's go do this. So then we have one of my favorite moments. Our other team has made it through where they need to make through. You have another cool transition. The gate slams shut. And Adea is looking so pissed off. It shocks her that they would be trying to do something like this. Side note, I love having Zephyr show up on the float. It's such a, wait, what the fuck? You're supposed to be dead, dude. What are you doing here? I'm jumping around a little bit, but actually before this, Rinoa and Squall are talking. And we have this nice scene where she's like, that's the kind of world you live in. You've had a lot of emotional training. Maybe not enough for Squall. I like that this builds up this crazy reality of child soldiers in this world. Rinoa is reminding us of it with this scene about them talking about if they fight Cypher, they might have to kill each other. And Squall has to be prepared for that, and he is. Again, reminding you from somebody who is outside this wheelhouse that this is the way things are going to go. And she's pretty sad about it, actually. So, the gates slam down. And then we have one of my favorite scenes, and it's the moment where, for me, Squall shows some of his emotional and leadership qualities. So we have the example of how he doesn't handle things well with Zell in that whole instance, and now we have this other one. And he's yelling at Irvine, enough, just shoot. And he's like, I can't, damn it. And he's talking about how history could change the world, but the main reason he really can't shoot is he knows this woman. He knows Adea. He remembers her as the matron. Again, it's fucking with his psyche, and he thought he was prepared to be the cool guy, but he just can't because he's a freaking kid, a child soldier. And he says this always happens to him. From our point of view, it just looks like this guy is, caving under the pressure, and Squall's like, oh my gosh. But we know in the back of our minds what is going to happen. But I love Squall's moment here, telling him to calm down and reminding him it's okay if you miss, we can take care of it, leave the rest to us. It's Squall's true leadership moment to me, and one of his first emotional pieces to creating his arc, or at least putting down one plank for his foundation, or one brick. And I love the last couple lines he does before Irving actually fires. He says, think of it as a signal, please. Damn, Squall, you're actually being really nice here. In this moment, the music fades. Oh, it's so freaking good. And Irvin is apologizing, and Squall says, it's okay. Your aim was perfect. Leave the rest up to me. It's such a cool moment. And he just jumps down, gets in a freaking car, jumping through the gates like a badass, and God, I'm loving it. And for this new cutscene to end on Cypher and Adea smiling really ups the emotion, and you are prepared for battle. This crazy sequence is leading to this. This whole situation is just a perfect setup for Cypher showing his dream to Squall. And it's more of the other side of things. So in the beginning, we had this tense moment, one-on-one battle of cuts in the opening cutscene. And now we are living this. This is a one-on-one battle. Cypher's dream that he's slowly explaining to Squall, and Squall on his mission as now a Seed member. I love this one-on-one battle. It's so good. Not to mention, you're just so surprised that Cypher's even alive, and now you have to fight him because he's in the way of your mission. And then, for Adea, I love this line. A seed planted in a rundown garden. such an ominous, weird thing to say right before you go into this battle with this amazing battle track. Oh my gosh, probably my favorite. I mean, Man with Machine Gun, super good, but Premonition, just an absolute killer battle song. Oh my gosh, I love it. And I love that they have planted again a seed for future revelations, a foreshadowing of what this all is about. And I think this is a pretty freaking epic fight. She's using really high level magic at you. Your party members slowly come in to help you out after Zephyr's been, relegated to the side. And what a way to end the fight. You win, but not really. Adea just throws a freaking chunk of ice right through you. Little me was like, what is going on? And adult me is like, man, this is such a good ending to Disc 1. Because right after you fall off the float down into darkness, Rinoa's looking at you. Do you want to save your game? Put in Disc 2. Are you kidding me? Yes, I will put in Disc 2. Now, there's a little side stuff you can do in Disc 1, but overall, what a freaking action-packed first disc. There's so much going on. You got all those little character moments that I really like slowly unpeeling them, especially Squall, only to end in this crazy cliffhanger. Let me go to Disc 2. The absolute last thing I wanted to do was go to a Laguna section after this whole cliffhanger ending. This is such a masterful way to do it, waking up as Laguna. I was dying to know what would happen. Now I have to play this wonderful bozo. Come on. This is such a strong motivator to get you through this section, but man, do I love this part. There's such an underlying sadness to this portion. The homes with the bullet holes, Laguna obviously running from his past, Kiro's talking about Ward and how he lost his voice and has kind of moved on. You have this small town with Rain, knowing that Laguna doesn't plan on staying here. There's just so much sadness, underlying sadness permeating this place. And my gosh, Laguna and Little Alone's relationship, it's just so perfect. I love the way they act between one another. And the dialogue just bleeds that, oh, this is a cool uncle with a kid he desperately is becoming attached to. There's just so much. And I love that Kiros is being the one to remind him of becoming this world-traveling journalist like he dreamed to be, like he told Julia he wanted to be. Another callback to that. And even later on, you can tell that Rain also senses that he doesn't want to be here because he has this other dream. And Laguna doesn't want to leave. He's fighting with that. This new life that he's found himself in, where he's been recovering for 6 months. And I think he's grappling with, it's been so long, and I have not gone back to the army. I haven't gone back to Julia either. And here he is in this town, playing, protector of this village. And the whole while this is happening, we have that underlying sense, but you can just tell that Kiros and Laguna just seem like genuine bros. Friends to the very end. He's coming and checking in on him. And of course, when things start to get a little bit more heated, or not heated, a little bit more deep, where Laguna has to think about some things more, hey, I see a monster, and just dashes off. I love it. Never change, Laguna. Never change. This entire moment is just to build up a little bit more about Laguna and what's been going on. And in the snapshot things, it seems kind of small and kind of quick to be done with it. But man, again, it's these little snippets that really pull some emotional weight later. And it has, again, it's a nice way to break up what was just happening. And then we get a very long section of the game in the prison scene that I actually really like. I actually like everything about it. Some people complain about the tedium of going up and down the floors with the encounter rate, but man, I just think this perfectly sets the tension of this entire plot point. I used to actually keep a save spot right here, specifically when I was a kid, so I could listen to the music in this section when you're trying to make your escape. That's how much I liked the music back then. Never saved over it and had to keep it so I could revisit it. A fun random memory of mine. I also like that the dream is now going to inform the present. Zell uses his connection to the dream world from Ward's point of view to inform them how to proceed, and he thinks he knows how all this works in the prison. And what I like about this is also gives us a nice moment for Zell for him to shine and have a leader-like quality while Squall is busy being tortured. And the Squall torturing bit is really good. They're trying to figure out what the meaning of seed is and why the sorceress is looking for it. Another one of the main mysteries slowly being unraveled. What is seed? Why is Adea so hell-bent on eradicating something she totally doesn't understand? And Cypher, not being a seed member, thinks there is some kind of secret, which is such a good plot device because Cypher's not good enough to get into seed, so he's like, well, obviously there's got to be something. And I love Cypher in this bit. Don't disappoint me now. He's guided by fulfilling his dream. He's kind of ecstatic about that. He doesn't want to lose what he's gained because Cypher has finally achieved it. He couldn't make the cut over and over again as a seed, but he's finally found something he believes in, and he made it work. It kind of just fell into his lap. It's tragic that this is kind of what has become of this character, but it's also kind of heartwarming. He has satisfied that childhood dream of becoming a sorceress knight. And I love Squall's reaction when Cypher tells him that the garden is going to be destroyed. You could just feel it. Like Squall's like, oh my gosh. And Cypher's like, kind of sucks. I grew up there, Woo. He's just like, I'm in this to win this. I got my dream. I'm gonna, even if it costs me my childhood friends and my home, whatever, And we get another little mystery that is slowly being unraveled with the Moombas. These little cool lion-like creatures, which as a kid, I enjoyed them. I thought they were pretty cute and kind of funny, and I was like, oh, this is kind of weird, but it seems like Final Fantasy always has a weird type of character to showcase. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, this is kind of dumb. Like, we have this serious torture plot. Why are we throwing in these little guys? And now I've come back around. I am now on the team. I think the Moombas are cool. And for some reason, they call Squall Laguna. Why is that, you say? Well, we'll figure it out, and it's one of those things that 1 is foreshadowing, 2 is connecting up some other plot threads, and 3 is setting up something that is obvious now that I've played this, again, but as a kid, I didn't totally know. And I'll jump to where my favorite track plays, The Oath. They finally find Squall, and he's actually real with them for the first time. They ask him how he's holding up, and he's just like, it was hell. And he gets his gun blade, heck yeah, and we're back to business. We get that one little line of him sharing his feelings, and then, nope, back into the game. A bit later, but seriously, this is one of my favorite scenes in the game. Squall comes in all badass and saves Zell from being executed. Squall being just a bit less serious. God, I love it so much. And then you have Selphie coming in mentioning Squall went off on his own and being, well, Zell must be really important to Squall. And Squall just can't believe this shit that he's happening right now after Zell's like, oh, we're doing his little pose. He did the cool thing, and now he's regretting it already. And it quickly then turns to Rinoa kicking Irvin down a set of stairs, which I just find so funny to me because Irvin's trying to be so cool. And then, oh gosh. And Rinoa's just excited that Squall's alive. And then they're fighting against Galbadia's soldiers. Irvin's blasting people. And he's really setting a new tone for himself, kind of throwing in a little bit of leader, telling Squall and everybody else what they're going to do while he holds everybody off. And it's a nice little moment because he was going to abandon everybody here in this prison, but I love this constant shift of tone, emotions. Each of the characters are in play. It's just all great. Every character gets a little line that I love. And then it ends with a decision in the desert. And gosh, this is what I'm talking about. Again, you have just amazing pacing. A nice little snippet of the quiet life. Think of the prison breakout. You get, some more information about the plot. You have this cool escape sequence. And now we have decision-making time. That feeling of tension just keeps going up and up. And it truly feels like you're going to be making a major decision right here, which technically you are. There's a lot that can and won't happen now that you've made this decision. And I'm a sucker for any time in an RPG where you're going undercover to infiltrate a place, and I like this missile-based infiltration. There's a lot of weirdness that goes on here, but Selphie's character really shines through. So the ending of this portion, when the missiles launch and the characters give a little time to say some words before they're going to die. Zell, he is pissed off even though he was prepared for this day, another show of that child soldier thing permeating everyone's outlook. Selphie doesn't talk outright, she only inner monologues, which shows a different side of her, which I really like. I like that in my file, she wonders if Squall will organize the garden festival, and nah, can't count on Squall for that. I really like that. Irvin thinks Squall didn't trust him, which that tracks for being the newbie. Quistis is wondering if Squall chose them because he knew this would happen. Rinoa thinks Squall put her on the team because she hated her, which slightly seems out of character, I will say, but she's feeling emotional at the end here. I've seen another one. She outbursts about she doesn't want to die because she has so much more in life to live for that she wants to enjoy, which that fits more so. Unsure how they got that sequence versus mine. I'm sure it was just how many times I talked to Rinoa and whatever choices I made. Selphie's last line, though, "Isn't that right, Squall?" is so freaking good. And then you have this really sad ending, only for it to shift drastically to entering the garden, and everything's in chaos. We get more details of the mystery of the faculty and the Sid conflict. For some reason, the faculty staff are looking to find Sid and kill him, and Squall's like, what the freak is going on here? So this conflict really comes to a head. We go down into the basement and start up the Balam Garden and make it fly. I thought this was so cool as a kid, like running around to each part and just trying to find Sid, and then culminating into our home base is going to freaking fly. And it kind of makes sense now looking at it from a lore perspective that Sid wouldn't know exactly what is going down there because that's where Norg's domain is. Freaking fat money-grubbing bastard. If you have Rinoa with you, you get this extra special scene when you're outside seeing the garden fly. I love that. Like a full-blown different cutscene. Like that's kind of insane. Because in my file, I didn't choose it, so I didn't get to witness this again. Now, in the first time I play this, I'm pretty sure I did see this cutscene, but think about that. You don't get the other dialogue options when the reunion eventually happens, and I really like some of the reunion stuff on my playthrough, so I guess you had to save a file so you can see them all. Do every permutation, who you're going to put here and there. Man, I should have done that actually now, so I could have talked about all of them, but this is what I have so far. Rinoa left behind. But man, this beautiful cutscene playing out when she's out there, wind's blowing in her hair. I'm like, yeah. And I do love that this part ends with Squall having one of his, we'll call it first explosion of inner thoughts. He's always been like this, but you can tell when he has nothing to do, it gets worse. I freaking love that line. He just always keeps thinking. Now, if you have brought Rinoa with you, she wakes up Squall saying he's adorable sleeping. Classic Rinoa just saying whatever she feels, and Squall just not reacting. It's so good. And Rinoa gets to be her adorable self and wanting to get a tour out of him, but not because she's ordering him to do it like their contract dictates, which I didn't even talk about, but they're contracted to be with Rinoa until Timber's independence. But she just wants to be with Squall. It's that budding relationship being more cemented because Squall gives in to her yet again. And one of my favorite aspects of this little tour is the hot dog lore. Hot dogs are a hot commodity in this game. And Rinoa makes fun of Squall for the explanation, which is just always good. And Squall just quips back, and what I like is that Rinoa immediately apologizes and tells him you don't have to get mad like that. So she knows what he's feeling right away and then expresses more concern and that she did something wrong, it's such a small, like, 4 or 5 sentences all together, the scene back and forth, and it says so much. The subtle back and forth tells a lot about each character. Squall again is being on the defensive, even though he did agree to this tour, but not a little bit more out of pleasing her than actually wanting to do it. Another scene that's on par with that previous one is if you go to the infirmary and Dr. Katawaki wonders if that's your girlfriend. And if you say no, Rinoa goes, "Gosh, can't you just say yes for fun?" And then Squall says, "All right, then, yes." I love it. And Katawaki says, saying we are cute, and it's just a nice little scene overall. It's such a good play off the hot dog lore and her reading Squall to now this, and it's just a fun back and forth. Eventually we get to the mystery of Norg, and it's Sid being super pissed, and we find out that this big old dude is the one who raised money to build the gardens. Sid needed the cash, so he turned to this dude Norg, and this whole clash is because of them having a falling out. There's a little bit more nuance to that, but honestly, the setup to the payoff just kind of felt a little lame to me. Again, it kind of just seems like something that was going to build up to something more, and this is just kind of like, oh, he's the money dude. It's just, it kind of echoes life maybe a little bit. Basically, the garden found themselves blinded by the money coming in, or the gill, and losing sight of the original goal that the gardens were supposed to be training to fight the eventual sorceress, which we'll get there. Though I do like that we get a great character moment again from Squall, where he's letting out his feelings after you defeat Norg, freaking out, taking it out on Rinoa this time, if she's there, about being manipulated in some major scheme. He feels like a helpless puppet. It's exactly the response you would think of coming from someone who is afraid of leadership and being destined to do something. And the reveal of why this all is the way it is great. I don't love this part of, the Norg Sid confrontation, but I do love this seed again being planted. And right after this, you can talk to Sid and he explains what Seed is. Seed is just all about training for the final battle against the sorceress. This is the true meaning of Seed. It's just that. Eventually kill the sorceress. There's this whole other plot thread coming around also that Sid married Adea, and we didn't know that. So this is us confirming that as well. And Sid tells us that one day she just started talking about Seed and building a garden. And that one day is very pivotal to the story later on. And Sid, like a good husband, went along with it and was just worried that they would fight Adea one day. And yes, that day has now come to fruition. We get a little break now, so we've done back-to-back crazy things between these missions on both sides of our parties. I think a really cool thing is there is this character that graduates with you, and they can be seen again later, and I think that's pretty great. And then we get the White Seed ship coming, looking to find Alone. Alone? Actually, don't know how to say her name. Alone. I'm just going to go with that. And we finally get another one of the big mysteries solved. The girl from the beginning is the little girl we see in Laguna's world. Little Alone, and she knows us, obviously, as well, because of that beginning thing where she said, "Finally found you." And, of course, the nickname for Quistis, Quisty. And naturally, Squall, reeling from feeling like a puppet, freaks out wanting to know what this all is about, what's happening to them. And Alone gives us a little tidbit that we are viewing the past, and she is trying to change the past. And Squall is just freaking out, asking, why me? He has enough problems. He feels the weight of fate bearing down on him, and he's just not able to understand why it has to be him. Don't count on me. And you can just feel him being done with this. He actually has to sit down, and this transitions into an amazing scene where Alone whispers something to Squall. And then in the dialogue, the narration, we get to see as Alone is leaving the garden to going on the Seed ship, he's telling us what's happening, paired with the music and Squall's inner dialogue is just so good. were my only hope. And we get another glimpse at Squall wrestling with wondering why people keep depending on each other. He admits that when he was a kid he had to, and he's gotten here because of others, but now he has the skills to survive. He's not just a kid anymore. And then you have him getting into the fetal position and saying, "That's a lie. I don't know anything. I'm confused." And I love that he asks himself, how can I not depend on other people? Someone tell me. Someone. So I'll end up depending on others after all. And we get a flashback to little Squall. I'm all alone, but doing my best. The loner persona being born in the past to deal with being left alone now. And the first mention of sis. So there was somebody else, a very important figure to Squall back then, and you can start to feel the connection between Squall's abrasive personality and not wanting to be touched because he doesn't want the people around him to leave him. So naturally, it creates this kind of persona around himself and this motivation to only depend on himself. It's finally coming together. For some people, this is too late. But to me, I think after so much has gone on, what he's survived with at this point, and now we're getting a glimpse into that past, is such a pivotal point in time that he's confused. We're getting some answers, but it's leaving more questions, like who actually is this girl? Timing-wise, pacing-wise, I think this is the perfect opportunity to throw this into the mix. A bit later, the garden crashes into this new town, and Sid orders you to go in town to figure everything out. That's funny. If you talk to him after he orders you to do this, you get this awesome line. "Squall, our fate lies in your hands." So then Squall thinks, what does he mean by that? And Sid says, "Scared you there, huh?" What a playful bastard. That's actually telling you how important we are to the grand scheme of things, but just throwing it aside because he's like, "Oh, I'm just joking." But no, our fate really is in your hands, Squall. I love this bit of foreshadowing. Again, an optional thing. You don't have to talk to Sid again. I love it. Fisherman's Horizon's great. The song that plays and just the vibe of this place, immaculate. I love it so much. And you get some cool lore stuff in Fisherman's Horizon about the people of this place because they helped build the gardens. And they're actually remnants of a faction that left SR, I believe, which is pretty cool. You can find that out in somewhere in the menu and in the lore, whatever. Lovely town. And just overall a cool concept about this this big solar hub in the middle of the ocean and connected by the highway. I just think it's a really cool idea. And eventually the town is invaded. We finally get a reunion of old pals we thought dead. Of course, they didn't kill them off because that would be a nightmare to implement the coding and everything and how this game would proceed if, 3 people at your party died. But who knows? Maybe they could have done it. And this scene is so good because, again, it shows character improvements from Squall. Even though if he doesn't outwardly say it, he thinks it. Squall does the garden salute as the team members come up out of the wreckage of this boss fight that we just did. And he doesn't say anything, but his insides are overcome with excitement. His thoughts say, "Yes, they're all right." 2 exclamation marks. Holy crap, Squall. And I want to touch on Rinoa's scene for if she's with you or if you left her behind to die. Which I know she didn't die, but we'll go off each one. If you let her go to the missile base like I did in my playthrough, when she thought she was going to die at the missile base, that's when she really missed you. And then you can respond with this. I'm so happy, so let me show you by punching you. It's so good. And then she just leaves. Oh, God, just top tier scenes in this game, especially in this disc, man. Oh my gosh. And I do like the other scene too. If you brought Rinoa along, she notices how happy you were and relieved that your comrade survived. It's kind of like Quistis a little bit. She notices, she's noticing you. And I like that she says it was really sweet. So honestly, I don't know which version I like better. If Rinoa stays behind, you get that great scene of her punching you if you pick that dialogue off. It's just so good. But then you also have the great tour and showing character development the other way around. I don't know. Both great. Love it. The next plot point is Irvin telling Squall that he should go cheer up Selphie. One of my favorite lines as well. I have a lot of favorite lines. Let's be real. But basically, Selphie's like, Squall is coming to me and trying to apologize. And she says, I must really look depressed. And I think that's so good. And you do get another moment where Selphie kind of comes out of there after a little bit more happens in the scene of saying like, oh, you're going into this little world, not sharing it with us. And I think it's a direct continuation to seeing how Rinoa confronted him in the forest. And now we have this, and Selphie has become more comfortable with it. And, she is a little bit more vulnerable at this time. So I just like this whole interaction. And this will lead us to another scene that starts to incorporate that theme of fate and what it means to be a leader. So Sid gets the intercom working on Balam Garden, which is always fun. And he announces that Squall is going to be the leader and making the decisions as they pursue the sorceress. And he literally can't believe this. I don't even have a choice. No, this is fate, my dude. Get used to it. And Sid lays it out plainly. You are destined to do this. Straight to Squall's face. And Squall is just having none of it. He's spiraling with his thoughts once again. And the gang, of course, seeing Squall sad and him being the new leader, what are they going to do? They're going to put a concert on for him. That'll cheer him up. And I'll be honest, I love this bit. It's goofy, kind of corny, but I love the intentions of our crew and all that's happening around it. And we get to go on a date with Rinoa. I love that this is their plan. Yes, Rinoa, here you go. Wear that nice dress again, get his attention. And depending on the choices that you pick during the concert edition, you get access to a different bits of dialogue in the date scene, which I didn't know. So I got to see a scene I've never seen before in any of my playthroughs. I thought you just picked the parts randomly. Rinoa telling him to let it all out, I think is such a good little moment. Oh my gosh. And we have another little bow to put around Rinoa and her viewpoint of life, showing that staying in this moment and relying on others isn't bad. Just think about it, Squall. Yeah, Squall. I mean, look at it. Look at all that your friends are doing for you. Maybe it isn't so bad. Jumping a little ahead, you go to Balam Town, fight Cypher's lackeys. There's a good line right here that reinforces, again, reminding you about the whole upbringing of these characters, where Squall is saying, friend or foe, it all comes down to circumstance. That's how we were raised. It's nothing special. And this is in response to Raging and Fujin talking about having to fight Cypher and all that jazz. But he thinks about it more, which is cool, and he starts to feel differently. Again, calling back to child soldiers and the whole emotional turmoil. Should it be okay that I have to go fight and potentially kill Cypher? In the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been that long where we're at school out in the playground area battling it out. You know, I got this permanent scar on me now because of that, but we were classmates. And I love that this game brings attention to this plot device, this plot point, the lore of this world again and again. Eventually, we are led to Trabia Garden to find a clue on what has happened, and of course, Selphie also wants to check in with the garden. And this is where the story goes some places. Now, I will say, this is a very unique twist. Amnesia is a very common trope in JRPGs, usually the protagonist, and they usually know that something has happened to their memories. Final Fantasy VIII really turns that up a notch, as it adds a whole group of them. This explains why a lot of them have very little in background outside of garden life because, well, they all thought they grew up in the garden this whole time, but no, they all knew each other, minus Rinoa, from when they were kids. They were all orphans together. I mean, to say it's a unique is an understatement. I know some people find this twist absurd, and it kind of is. At least there are breadcrumbs along the way to get us to this moment. How it's laid out works for me. Do I think it adds much to the overall story and just kind of seems thrown in there? Maybe a bit. This is why Alone calls Quistis Quisty. This is why Squall has trust issues. Alone left him at the orphanage. This will be the catalyst for the end of the game and being a focal point for them to focus on. If you do some of your optional things, there were some breadcrumbs there too. Selphie in her journal, knowing that she's transferring to Balam Garden, is worried about losing her memories because of Guardian Forces. There are notes in the menu about Guardian Forces are experimental and may cause memory loss, but nothing has been proven. And 17 years ago, maybe a little bit longer too, the Sorceress War left a lot of kids orphaned. It kind of all clicks in a very awkward sort of way to make it believable, even if I'm unsure if it was the proper choice. But I think they left enough there, especially on a second playthrough, a third playthrough, whatever, or just diving into the lore. Yeah, it all kind of clicks. And it happens on a basketball court, of all things. Irvin just drops the news about this orphanage, and we all grew up there, even Cypher. Our party members all start realizing that they know this orphanage that Irvin is talking about. And I like how this all unfolds, the little versions of us. We get to see some scenes that take place and walk around as Squall in this like ghost-like image. So how they present this whole thing, basketball court aside, also enveloped around, this garden that just got destroyed. So the lives of so many people have been destroyed around them. There's a lot of emotional stuff going on that it kind of works for me. And one little resolution, this is basically the resolution to this point of Quistis and her character, her infatuation with Squall, she thought it was love, but it was buried deep down feelings of being an older sister to Squall at their time at the orphanage. It's a bit messy, but I think I like this for her and her arc. I like that she also mentions that she completely gave up once Rinoa came into the picture. It follows along with Dr. Katawaki mentioning they were cute together. There's just something different about Squall when Rinoa's around, so I like that as another thread that is pulled through this story. And the next big reveal that happens in this part is we realize that the matron of the orphanage is also Adea. Adea should know what seed is. This is our next big mystery slowly being unraveled, which is good. We're getting answers to some questions, and some we probably didn't even have, but we still have more to go. So at the conclusion of this, they decide to go fight, even if it's a hard decision, to move on with their lives. They think that even though they are losing their memories or have lost some of their memories, obviously it can come back, so it's not totally lost, is worth the power advantage in battle to defeat the sorceress. So we go to the orphanage to get our answers. But hold up, Galbadia Garden is there, and we get to experience one of the coolest parts and another great ending to this chapter. With another huge caveat to characters yet again being dumb. Why do some of my favorite parts of this game have to have a dumb part? I don't know why. And I love that the confrontation of these two floating gardens. You as their leader now have to give a bunch of orders before the opposing garden fights you. Zell, at the most inopportune time, getting ready to fight this invading school where a lot of people are going to die, Zell's like, hey, Squall, can I borrow that ring? Because Rinoa wants to make a matching one, but it's too big. Well, of course, Zell is with Rinoa at some point. The ground starts caving away as the gardens are smashing together, and Rinoa falls down this cliffside that has opened up, and she's hanging off the edge of a little shelf that has now broken off. And we get to see parts of the dirt and part where the floor used to be crash down into where the garden spokes are below her, and it just gets destroyed, caught up in the rings of the garden. So if she falls, she's going to get split in half. Probably more so than just in half. Probably quite a few little pieces. Zell can't reach her, so he says, hold on, we'll be right back. And here we learn that Rinoa is the strongest person in our party because we do not come right back. We take a long, long time to actually rescue her. They could have easily planned around this. The timing could have worked, and we could have still got this awesome dramatic moment that we will be getting that again raises the tension because it's a good scene, but it's hard to focus on the other goodness that follows because the longer it takes for us to get back to Rinoa, the less believable it is. And there's some good shit here because this whole sequence is freaking awesome. Again, why did they have to make it happen right then? It does take away from this scene as a whole, but I still love it so much. Squall at some point ends up having to deal with junior classmen in one of the classrooms, and we get this sick CGI of the Galbanian soldiers crashing in, deal with them, go to the upper level. Rinoa is still hanging on. Squall keeps pussyfooting around, and everyone's like, you have to be the one to save her. And then the doctor distracts us, yes, yet again, like, hey, telling us you need to talk to the people of the garden. Go motivate them. And you're like, I got so many freaking shit going on here, man. And I think this is a great speech. It plays my favorite track, once again, The Oath, gives Squall some more insight into stepping into his leadership role just a bit. And what I love is right off the bat almost, we get a bit of empathy from Squall as their leader figure. And he says this, you're all probably too tired to even stand up after all the fighting. Nice little character moment. Again, these are all sprinkled in. Another line that I really like is he says what everyone has been feeling, or at least the secret that's kind of been going around. So this battle is Garden's destiny, and also our destiny. It's a grueling battle, and I'm sure you guys are all exhausted, but I don't want to have any regrets. I don't want anyone to look back and regret this day. And coming off his decision after learning about the orphanage and who it is that they are hunting, it just shows so much growth from the beginning of this game. And another subtle portion, he doesn't really fight Dr. Katawaki on this bit about making a speech in general. He's truly feeling this in the moment and trying to appease some of the worries that his fellow classmates and seed members are going through right now. And the plan is to take the offensive, so they go and ram the garden immediately after. Don't worry, Rinoa is very strong. She can handle this. One of my favorite, even though another kind of dumb distraction, but Squall goes to save this boy, and this Galbadian soldier blindsides him on this flying mech, and you end up getting tossed out of the moving garden. And you're dangling from this rope and having a fist fight in the air, trying to beat the crap out of the soldiers to make them fall to their death. It's kind of ridiculous and over the top, but hey, I'm here for the action now. And dude, I died way too many times in this part because you can only take a few hits before you're done. And apparently my older brain just could not compute the timing of this because I had to restart this a little too many times. But he ends up taking over the machine and flying over to where Rinoa is, and she latches onto the rope, and we glide down into the main battle taking place outside of the Galbadia garden. This is so freaking cool. We are walking amidst this crazy detailed cutscene of all-out warfare going on behind us. We are meant to meet up with Zell and the rest of them to charge in and take out Adea. So we're running past all this craziness that's happening. It's so freaking cool. And of course, once we get a moment to have a breather, while everyone is fighting for their lives, like, well, buddy, you just gave that speech. You just boosted everybody's morale. They're fighting for their lives. And we're going to have Rinoa let you know that Zell gave her the ring. She's holding on to it, and that's why she couldn't die out there. I do love Squall is thinking, I'm going to kill him. That's what he says in his thoughts. He really likes that ring, apparently. It's of a lion, not a monster. And lions are known for great strength and pride, and this ring has a name. So it is very important to Squall. Obviously, this is supposed to be a huge moment for Squall, giving us a bit more insight, and we're naming this manifestation of pride, something he cherishes. But it's not the time, guys. Damn it, this would have been fine somewhere else. Either way, I love these moments of catch-up, but not on the battlefield, dude. That's the conclusion I get to with these scenes. I love them. They just should not have been a part of the tension building for other elements of the scene that's going on. Because it just feels like, we have to put this in somewhere. Let's throw it in here. So we're through Galbadia Garden, and what I love about this is a dungeon that is a place we had visited before and that we fled to for safety. I love that concept. It just gives this place such a more eerie feel. Plus, you can face off against evil hockey dudes in the ice rink, so that's a little bizarre. And it all culminates into another confrontation with Sefer and Adea. It's the ending of Disc 1, but in a different location, and our characters have changed a bit since last time. You would think this would be redundant, but man, do I love this. Especially with Adea just lounging in the background. It just emanates, I am a powerful being that does not care. And this again shows that Cypher he is committed to this new dream, no matter what it costs. He was willing to blow up the garden, but now he's willing to go to war to protect this dream of his, and he will do anything to eliminate Seed for her so he can live in this moment. And his last thing he says, you guys are the monsters. And the battle begins. God, that gives me chills. It's so good. I love a good battle entrance, and here we are with Cypher showing us his new limit break, Demon Slice, which is just a wild new move for him. And I do love at the end of this confrontation, the only thing Adea says to Cypher is, worthless child, and she just melts into the ground. How freaking badass is that? So we have to go down and confront her, and Adea comes crashing down through glass and stands before a podium and declares, so the time has come. And what I like about the next line that she says, it ends in a question mark, which is so indicative of what is going to happen soon. You're the legendary Seed destined to face me. I love that line because it shows that Seed is legendary in her mind, and again, she should know all about it because we know she's the one that started it and the garden. Sid let us know that. And it clicks for Squall. You're not our matron. Again, when the seeds are laid out, when all the foreshadowing and all this stuff, everything kind of starts clicking, and I don't mind the orphanage reveal because it has actually a little bit even more weight now that we're facing the matron, because she's not. I love that Cypher is here too, just trying his best to stand up and fight alongside the not Adea sorceress, and he gets taken out so easily. But it just shows how messed up his dedication to this lady is. He wants to prove himself so much because he knows if he doesn't, well, his dream is dead. Another great battle against another awesome boss. You have the music playing. Again, it's a repeat of the ending of Disc 1, but it's just a little bit more weight to there now, a little bit more mysteries, and I still love it. Oh, so much. And when you defeat Adea, or not Adea, she releases this crazy purple mist, and everything goes hazy, everything's like light tinted, and we watch Rinoa walk over to Cypher as he's laying on the ground. She kind of holds him, and then he gets up like he's revived, he's good to go, and he just walks away. And Rinoa just falls to the ground and passes out, and all this weirdness just kind of fades away. And then Adea up there snaps back to reality, and she's acting different, she's speaking different, and the question that truly throws Squall for a loop is, where is Elone? Did I protect Elone? And the disc ends with something being wrong with Rinoa. Now, this isn't as an epic of an ending as compared to the first disc, but I think it is a very, very strong one. Again, we have more mysteries. What's going on? What is up with Adea changing her tune? Where did Cypher go? What happened to Rinoa? Why is this not the matron? Why did Elone need protection? And when I look at the awesomeness of Disc 1, I honestly think Disc 2 might be better, which is kind of crazy because they throw a lot at you, but I feel like there are more character moments that I enjoy. There are still a few down parts, like I didn't love the resolution with Norgan stuff, but I think all this just screamed awesome. And again, if you're wanting to do more side content, you can do some really cool optional stuff at this point in the game. Plus, you get the garden, it's flying, you can explore the world. I think this, again, is just paced really well. It's crazy that Disc 1 and 2 are so freaking good. Now, there is more Laguna in Disc 1, so maybe that puts over the edge. But for now, I think, especially this ending scene, all the little questions it asks right there at the very end, it's a strong case for us to get into Disc 3 and be excited about what's going to happen next. So let's do it. I'm not saying Disc 3 is bad, it's just when you compare it to the through lines of Disc 1 and 2, it's just not as strong. Especially knowing that a lot of this that's coming up is going to be very exposition heavy, which will be good for the notes, I guess, but honestly, I think people also might overblow this a bit. It might be more shaky, but I still think it has a strong foundation, but let's find out. We immediately get our answer to what happened to Rinoa. Something is wrong with Rinoa. She is unresponsive, so we have to go get our answer. So we go to the ruins of the orphanage. We finally get there after the Battle of Disc 2, and we meet Adea and Sid. This is where we hear the first mention of Ultimecia, the true antagonist of this game. Started Disc 3, and we finally know who we're actually fighting. She's been here the whole time. We just actually have a name to, and the difference of why Matron was acting the way she was. She's a sorceress from many generations in the future looking for Elone, and the personality trait we get from her is she's a very fearful sorceress with a heart filled with anger and hate. Now you look back at all the previous interactions with Adea, it all starts to make sense. She's putting on this tough aura, but she's actually scared of us. Hence why she was doing her best to find Elone, and also why she talks about the legendary seeds. All right, we got another mystery solved, but now we find out what Ultimecia's next plan is. And she's trying to take over Sorceress Adele, which we've heard little rumblings about via NPC dialogue and lore drops along the way, not outright in the story though. And Squall is showing a different side of himself. He's so focused on Rinoa that we get blips of plot, but he's just remembering all about Rinoa in his head, and I think this is really cool. They're talking about all this stuff, and Squall's over here. You were looking at me. You smiled when our eyes met. In the little plot pop-ups of the UI dialogue, we get the first mention of time compression, and Ultimecia wants to send her consciousness further into the past, and that's why she needs Elone. But Squall's over here. It made me feel calm, tranquil. Again, this is Final Fantasy VIII being different. This is a huge plot device and thread about what's going on, and we have Squall thoughts intertwined with the flow. I actually think I love this. It's also not the most optimal way to do this, but it showcases what he's going through in the moment. It really speaks to the character, and again, it's an artistic choice that I think really does work. Even again, it's not the optimal way to do things. And Selphie yells at Squall for not listening. He's like, basically, all right, keep Alone away from Ultimecia. Well, yeah, you're right. Okay. And we get this really nice scene about Squall beside Rinoa's bed, and he says, I want to hear your voice, which is such a real emotion. And unfortunately, I've had a similar revelation that hit me like a truck, so adult Michael can understand this when you realize you'll never hear someone's voice again. It can really wreck your soul. Didn't know how much this scene would be elevated by my own world experiences, but here we are. And this does show that old adage, you don't know what you have until it's gone. I think it's done fairly well here, especially for a guy who keeps telling himself not to get attached or depend on other people. Yet again, it's being taken away from him. He can't not stop thinking about it. Before it was when he was bored and he couldn't stop thinking. Now he has real shit to do, and he still can't get himself to stop thinking about Rinoa. I actually really like this little bit. It's showing that it's evolved to interrupt his daily life. And he eventually gets put to sleep, which we get the oddest dream sequence for Laguna yet that actually has significant impact for Cypher, which is weird. We get to see the filming of the Sorceress Night, which is the entire catalyst for Cypher's dream and what he uses to drive the future he sees himself. In battle, Cypher even mimics the movements from this film. All because of Laguna and company. He needed money. The other revelation we get here is that Alone is sleeping and can't disconnect from Squall. So she's using her powers unwillingly, and I think she actually gets a name for it. She calls it Connect. That's what she calls her own power. And this sparks Squall into thinking, oh, I should go back and see what happened to Rinoa. But we also get another pivotal scene. Laguna knows Matron Adea. We have a quick scene of him approaching her in the orphanage and searching for Alone. So another little layer to add on. Wow, there's a connection between Laguna and Squall. Or at least they were circling the same places, and Alone seems to be the center of it. And he needs to now go into Esther. I think that's how you say that. I've never actually said that word out loud. Estar? Estar? Or Esther? I don't know. And then we get another tragic point. We learn about the heartbreak of Laguna. My gosh, this just eats my soul. I don't know what it is because I love Laguna so much. Alone tells Squall you can't change the past. And she says it, she tried. She tried to keep Uncle Laguna in the village so he could be with Rain when she dies. Alone keeps calling out, but she can't stop Laguna from coming to rescue her from her kidnappers. And her kidnappers at this point are the people under Adele, so Estar soldiers, looking for her successor. So since she's no longer there in that moment anymore, like Alone's not with Laguna at the orphanage, she can no longer go back there. Therefore, the past can't be changed. She tried and nothing changed it. And we have seen where we have some influence, and Laguna calls it the fairies. He can hear our thoughts when we're in this dream sequence, but we don't change anything. We're just witnessing it. So we have the new game plan. 2 birds with 1 stone type of thing. We're going to find Alone, which then we can protect Alone from the sorceress, and then we can possibly save Rinoa, figure out what's going on. So this leads us to find the white seed ship that's floating around Galbadia. Some people complain that this is hard to find. I found it pretty easily this time. I think it moves locations. And Alone isn't even there. What I do like about this part is we learn that these people are like the Seed Gardens, but they're just on this floating ship. They even have the same salute, I think Squall mentions at one point. And when they're telling you the story that they said an Estar ship showed up and Alone, acting very peculiar, just jumped off their ship with a smile on her face. And I like this a little bit because I know why. So Squall is basically like, all right, I'm going to abandon everyone. I'm going to take Rinoa on my back, and I'm going to walk to Esther. I don't care. I'm going to find a way in. She's kind of losing it a bit, but he's determined no matter what to do this. He doesn't even tell anyone that he's going. He just axe. You're the leader? Nope, dealing with my own shit. I'm vacating. I'm deserting almost. And I love that we get these 2 lines of dialogue almost back to back. What am I doing? And I sure have changed. Yes, you have, Squall, and it's a beautiful, slow unveil of how much this is affecting him. This is probably the best character scene so far for Squall, and him being real with himself. He always worries about what the others are thinking about him, and he's wondering what they're doing right now, laughing or being angry at him. It's such a real emotion for this guy or this teenager, this kid, who has been somewhat unrelatable for the majority of the game. And when I first played this game, this part resonated with me. I mean, this whole thing of Squall resonated with me because I did think about how other people perceive me. I still do. That's a thing I always work on. It doesn't go away, kids. That was me as a kid, always worrying about how I looked, how I wanted to perceive to be a different way than what I felt inside. And the writing isn't always spot on, but for me, I think this game does a great job showcasing how somebody could feel if they are more of the loner material and try not to let people burn them. Now, I had a bunch of friends and stuff at this time, but this was a glimpse into the headspace of little Michael once in a while, where he just overthought everything. I do love this little part too, where he's like, that's a secret between you and me. I love that line and how he looks back at Rinoa. And all this is happening on the highway, over the ocean that's connecting these 2 continents. I just think this is framed so wonderfully. Again, there's not a lot going on gameplay-wise up to this point, but I still like it. The whole party is waiting for us along this road. Even Adea wanting to go to Esther to see if she can rid herself of her powers so Ultimecia can't control again. And I love that Squall immediately puts the walls back up the second the party's there. I just love it. It's going to take a little time to fully change for you, Squall, because he was very open when talking free with Rinoa, but she couldn't talk back, so there's that. Kind of like talking to a wall, eh, Squall? I like the reason they can't find Esther is because the entire city has a cloaking device, and they find a panel that's malfunctioning, and that's how they get in. This seems kind of like a plot coincidence, but honestly, this one doesn't bug me. Plus, if you get inside, you can learn about these panels, which is kind of cool. And side note, I kind of skipped over it, being able to use Adea in the party is super cool. Again, I get to see her little character profile picture, and what? The person I've been fighting for 2 discs. I mean, it's not the same person, but you know what I mean. I think that stuff is so cool. When we're trying to sneak into this city and, not be discovered, we get a bad time in dream sequence connection. Kiris and Ward are sent to the lunatic Pandora to work, and Laguna is meant to stay around here and work. So we assume they are in Esser by the soldiers' outfits. I love that Laguna is just his usual self no matter what situation he's in. He's asking the Moomba, are you alright? You scared of fight? Exhausted? Showing compassion for someone, even if they are different. The Laguna way. And we get a little seed planted here about resisting Adele and SR soldiers needing a leader. So Sorceress Adele is leading this country. And not everybody's happy about that. And why do I have this sinking feeling that Laguna is somehow going to fall upwards? Because this is what he does. He gets himself in situations that he really can't get out of. Also, him yelling jailbreak is the most Laguna thing ever. It's so good. And I like that he says this. He literally says, tragically, we know that because of this decision, he won't be with Rain in the end, which is super sad. But he does get to find Alone and break her out, and I love that little reunion they have. In present time, we get to explore this new city, pretty neat technologically advanced sprawling metropolis. Like everything, it feels a bit different than what you would expect it to be, which is the Final Fantasy VIII way. We go to this lunar gate, and Zell gets a nice moment, if you let him, wanting to protect Adea and show he is the one for the job. So you trust Zell, love making Zell happy, so this was an easy answer for me. It's what bros do. So we get launched into space because apparently this is how we're going to solve Rinoa's problems. And as soon as Squall, Rinoa, and whoever you pick leaves, This giant foreign object comes floating above Esther, and our party decides to infiltrate that because we're going to try and figure out what the heck that is. And we realize it's where Laguna was in Disc 1. And it doesn't really make any sense because you're like, was it flying around before? No, what the heck is going on? What is this? We don't have all the answers yet, but I love that we're going back to this. And it also shows you how Laguna truly falls into all the important plot devices of this game. We still don't know what this thing is yet, though, but obviously it's important if it's showing up here. And eventually this thing blocks our path, which we think is going to be a boss fight, and it just yeets us out of there. It's so funny to me. It keeps that serious yet goofy tone that is hard to nail, but this scene works for me. We get a Dea as this thing is going off into the distance, referencing the lunar cry. Jumping over to Squall, we get this cool space pod catch scene, and my gosh, this is so elaborate and so crazy. And it's over. It's like, okay, did you need to put all the money into this? Yes, please. Keep doing stuff like this. I love it. Just like with the Dalit communication towers going online. Over the top, keep doing it. Eventually, this leads us to putting Rinoa in a fancy space bed. We get clarity to what the lunar cry is. It happened about 100 years ago and caused a crater on the continent. So, probably not a great thing. And also, the moon is full of monsters. Moon's haunted. Always has been. And so we finally figure out what is up in this space station. What is the purpose of this? This is where Adele has been imprisoned. And why specifically up here? Well, it's something to do with the moon, stars, and the gravitational pull. It's prime location for this device. This material Adele is encased in prevents her powers from leaking out. But it also cuts off all outside contact. Radio waves, telepathic waves, Junction, anything. Junction is a key one here. Ultimecia has been hopping around in sorceresses, and she can't control Adele if she's in this thing, in this device. What I like about this, so that all these things, all this communication is blocked, this harkens back to the very beginning of the game, where the radio tower being so important. Any forms of communication being blocked off coming in and out of Esser, it keeps this very powerful being from finding a way to escape. I think this is super cool. That event that they registered 17 years ago, here it is. This is the reason why SR went off the planet. Communication stopped. And think of the side effects of this. No longer can all these countries communicate over radio waves. They have to do all these landlines, apparently, underneath the oceans and stuff. And the technological advances, and then it got cut off. All because of Laguna, technically. And this leads to that foreshadowing that I talked about at the very beginning of this. In Disc 1, before the present broadcast, before it goes online, when Rinoa says, "What is this? It's creepy." It's Adele's words. They're hard to make out, but when it switches in motion, you can start to read it better. And this is what it says. "Bring me back there. I'll never let you forget about me. I am alive here." It's so fucking good. It's right there at the beginning. Such an ominous foreshadowing. And my gosh, when I learned about this, it just makes that part even... They were thinking about it, you know? Everything's kind of connected. And that's the kind of reveal never blatantly said. It's even hard to read, especially in the remastered. I had to really zoom in. I love reveals like this. So Alone is up here in the space station. We get some more confirmation. She says she can't change the past, but you can learn some new things to inform the present. So we take Alone to Rinoa, but Rinoa's a little bit different since we last left her. She's acting all ghostly and doesn't want to be touched by Squall. He's finally ready to embrace, and she's just gonna blast him away. It's very rude. No one can stop her from releasing the controls on Adele's prison. The lunar cry happens. Monsters gather and fall from the moon to Tyr's Point. Lunatic Pandora is. This is some over-the-top wild stuff. But this is where monsters come from, I guess. They just gather on the moon and then beam down to the surface of the Earth. Did they need to do this lore bit? I don't really know. It's kind of cool. It's very weird. Rinoa eventually gets in a spacesuit. We pass Laguna without knowing, which is a cool little tidbit, and she goes to let out Adele. And my gosh, the cutscene of Adele's little smirk that she does is so freaking creepy. I love it. And we get this really psychedelic scene with the lunatic Pandora that I honestly don't totally understand, but it's visually a feast, so there is that. I honestly have no idea what's going on, besides them making a connection at Tear's Point. So this beam of monsters ended up engulfing Adele's cage after she's being let out, and Rinoa goes flipping out into space. Squall is freaking out, and Alone agrees to send Squall back to Rinoa's past. Because he's grasping at everything. He needs to know what is going on with Rinoa right now. And I like that they take a moment. You get to see some cool scenes back to back, but it's too far back in the past. But he wants to get to what happened to Rinoa when she passed out. And we find out that Ultimecia was in possession of Rinoa since the end of Disc 2. We finally get to see what she looks like, and we have to wrestle with the idea that we led Ultimecia to this place. So we are the potential downfall to this entire city because we brought Ultimecia here. And Adele is loose, so we got a lot of problems. But this means Rinoa can become a sorceress, or else Ultimecia wouldn't be able to possess her. So now we have a couple more mysteries solved. But it's presenting us with a new problem. Not really a new question, but now we have to live with this information that we just, piggybacked Ultimecia all the way here. So Squall's like, well, screw this. I'm going to go out there and catch Rinoa because, well, I don't want her to die. These feelings are just pumping me to be erratic. And that's exactly what you do. You go out there in the spacesuit, Rinoa's tumbling around in space, and you go up there and you catch her. It's pretty cute. I like it. Now, what the heck are you supposed to do? You're trying to leave. Alone's back there with Quistis, at least in my playthrough, and you just left them. They're going to go float back down to Earth in the escape pod, but you're just out here floating with your girl. I guess you're going to die out here? Conveniently, there is a spaceship floating out here. Now, one thing I'll give. Later on, they reveal that these things were used to blast Adele's prison up to this position. So theoretically, this thing could be there. They do show that this thing is out there, potentially. But this is very plot-convenient reason to save us. The thing they need to survive out in space is just conveniently floating next to them. Kind of sucks from that perspective and harms the scene a bit again. This happens quite a bit in this game. But character development-wise for Squall, it shows that Rinoa just makes him irrational. He can't be the leader until he has her, which will be a problem I have later in another scene, but we'll get there. Even with all the setup to the problems with this scene, I admit the shot of Ragnarok spinning and us in our spacesuits coming closer, freaking awesome. Again, spectacle of the game, top notch, no complaints in that regard. And one of my favorite little scenes is once we get into this spaceship, we get cute little Rinoa wanting a hug. She's like, the spacesuits were in the way before. And he's just like, oh my gosh. I can't stand not having her in my life, but right now I can't stand to show this emotion to her either. So she's like, oh, we gotta survive. There's too much going on. So when they get on the trajectory that, oh, things are safe, they are headed back towards the Earth. We are in the cockpit of this new spaceship that we commandeered, and we get a song that starts playing, and it's called Eyes on Me, the love song that Julia wrote for Laguna. And when you really pull back the picture, it's kind of beautiful how they set all this up. So Julia writes the song about a guy who's in the bar always looking at her. Eyes on me, right? And she tells that to Laguna at that bar scene. She's so excited, waiting for him to return from the war and they can start their life. Hopefully it goes somewhere. This love song that blossoms. And now we have completely different people starting that journey that Julia and Laguna started in the hotel room, but now we have Squall and Rinoa being intimate with one another. Squall is still kind of standoff-ish. It's like the reality he wanted is coming true, and now he's just not used to this whole situation, and he echoes that sentiment in the dialogue. I was always alone, which then Rinoa hugs him tighter. I think my favorite part of this banter back and forth is when Rinoa doesn't want to go back, because obviously she knows she's a sorceress, and they have made it pretty clear that when they land, they're going to take Rinoa into custody because she's a danger. I mean, they look at what Adele did, the wars that started, and they don't want another sorceress running around out there. A little quibble with this, though. They did leave Adele somewhat unchecked, so there is that. So Rinoa is showing sincere emotion of being scared of going back. She wants to live in this moment, kind of like she echoed on the date scene, right? Live in the moment right now. So Squall actually gets out of his seat and embraces her and comforts her. It's a strong ending to this scene. So we land the spaceship, and we get a little lore drop right here, which is kind of cool. Esther Soldier is like Sorceress Rinoa, Hein's descendant. And if you talk to a dude in Balam Town, he talks about the god Hein, which is cool that someone else mentions it in the main story, though. Again, could be a very out of left field because how they go about telling their lore and important information in this game is a little wackadoodle. Somewhere along this, we learn that Ultimecia is the only one that can survive when time compression happens, or at the end of it at least, when it's complete. And I think this is in reference because if Rinoa goes away, then she can't be hijacked by Ultimecia, and so that's good. So she's going to, so Ultimecia's plan, I don't know, this is kind of weird, is going to end the world not to die by the hand of Seed, but she's going to be the only one that can exist. Over dramatic, don't you think? I don't know. That seems like, well, if they're going to keep hunting me, I'll just end the world. Now, the thing that they don't really extrapolate, which could be a thing, when this ends up happening, can she then, with all this godlike power from time compression, can she make the world herself? I don't know. I assume she's becoming a god, so if you end up killing everything in the world, you're the only one that can survive, you're just going to die of starvation, so little problems in your plan, girl. Alright, so the part that I don't like is Squall lets them take Rinoa. After all he went through to save her, how erratic he's being, he just lets them take her. Which I'm happy they at least have this scene where Quistis comes in and says exactly that to him. You're a fool. And I kind of feel the same way. I think I think I know what they're trying to go for. They're just saying that there's so much going on for Squall to absorb and process all of this. Maybe a tad too much of him holding back here when he should be fully embracing his new role. Be a bit more selfie. You have to go get her. I do like the through line is about hearing Rinoa's voice again, and that thought snaps him back into action mode. But I think it's just a little messy in its execution. But we do get this great cutscene moment coming up, so worth it, maybe? And I love that you get Selphie flying the ship, and Squall's inner thoughts is so good. No one can predict the future, right? Referring to Selphie basically like, she might crash the plane. She knows how to fly, right? Sort of, maybe. So we go and release Rinoa, and there's some nice party chat about Rinoa being embarrassed and what to do next. She decides to go to the orphanage to be away from people, basically plot reasons to get us to this upcoming scene that ties back to the very beginning of the game, which I do love. And so we get this moment where Squall and Rinoa are near the orphanage, kind of overlooking a field. And they're just... Squall wants to basically say, what do I need to talk to Rinoa about to kind of appease her, to make sure that she understands that I've changed and that I want to do what's best. And probably my favorite line, or one of them, that comes out in this exchange is, "It's pointless. I'll just end up going after you again. Rinoa, stay close to me." It shows that Squall has realized he won't let Rinoa go now, and Rinoa is very excited to hear those words. And to quell Rinoa's fears about her nightmares of not finding Squall, she tells this nightmare where she just keeps calling out to Squall. So he says, and the reason she couldn't find her way to him is because they hadn't promised each other. So he promises to be here. The opening of the game, and we finally get to see the conversation and what it means, setting up a connection through time to make it back under a shooting star. That comes a little bit later. So we end up going back to Esther because Kyros contacts us and they have a plan to defeat Ultimecia and want to hire Seeds to do it. And we go and we finally get to meet Laguna in the present. I love that Kyros and Ward are there in their goofy Esther diplomatic outfits. I mean, they're not that goofy, but it's just, to me, they look goofy in that because I'm so used to them in their other outfits. And Laguna's in this teal-looking button-up with some brown trousers and flip-flops. Freaking amazing. And I love the little tidbit that Selphie is freaking out about meeting Laguna. It's so great, especially when you know that she has this blog talking about him. I think the best part about all this is he just turns around, he's like, "Hey there, you were the peeps in our heads. Nice to meet ya." It's so awesome. I don't know why. And then he ends up recounting the tale of what we've seen before, and kind of going through the dream sequences. And I think we get in there that Alone's parents were killed in Wyndham and during the Adele Wars looking for the successor. So we have that confirmation. And it culminates into the ending discussion is we figure out that Galbadia got Alone's space pod and took her to the lunatic Pandora. So we're going there to rescue her. Now there's some great character line stuff here, and my favorite one is if you try to ask about Rain, and Laguna won't even respond because it's too painful for him. What I like about this is Laguna is kind of, you know what he's thinking all the time, and he shares everything all the time. So when he's normally open and he chooses not to talk about this specific scenario in his life, when you're asking him directly, shows a lot of his character. And maybe for the first time, like when he said he just reacts to things and doesn't really think it through. Maybe this is the first time where we're seeing Laguna finally taking the time to look inside himself and look at his choices, or face the choices. I mean, not even face the choices at this point. He's realizing even going there kind of hurts him, right? So he is not ready, and he knows that at this point. Because I don't think he's ready to face what his choices led to. Now, I like if you choose the dialogue option about how he became the president, you get this very long explanation, and you get to see how they tricked Adele into walking into this prison that they constructed. It's Laguna-filled hijinks yet again. It's great. It's really long, but again, I believe this is missable if you don't choose this option. So more of the story that isn't told unless you seek it out. A whole freaking cutscene again is in there too. So another example of they spend a lot of money and budget on this, and you could just miss it. I think one of my other favorite parts about this discussion is the culmination that leads to this. And before I knew it, all this time had passed. He's summing up basically his life story, how he got to this point, and that is so damn relatable. He wishes he went back with Alone to see Rain, but he didn't choose that. And he's been here ever since. 17 years. Oh. But we did come here for the plan, and they need us, Seeds, to execute it. Odine, the Dr. Dude, explains it. Ultimecia needs to keep jumping back in time to get to Alone to compress time. Obviously, Alone doesn't exist in Ultimecia's time since she's so far in the future, so she keeps jumping back. So the plan is defeat Adele. Ultimecia's power will then go to Rinoa, because she's a sorceress. Alone will send Ultimecia and Rinoa to the past, where Ultimecia needs to be to start time compression. Once it starts, she'll cut off her connection, sending Rinoa back to our present, and Ultimecia will go all the way into her future. We obviously have no way to get to the future. There's no time machine in this world. Alone can only take our conscious to the past, and we can't even change it. But if time compression is happening right now, then we can use that to go to the far future. So it's kind of cool that the way we have a chance of winning is letting Ultimecia obtain her goal of time compression. The only way to save the world is to end the world, which is kind of nuts. I love it. Afterwards, this whole spiel is done. Laguna, in the most Laguna way, explains how to live in a time-compressed world, basically. You know, his PSA. Believe in your friend's existence, and they'll also believe in yours. What place reminds you of your friends? Imagine being at that place with your friends. Well, that's not a very detailed plan, Mr. Laguna, but I guess we're going to go do it. What I do like is they're using their forgotten past to survive at a once unfathomable place in the future that they could never get to. That's kind of beautiful. And Rinoa now has that promise from Squall at the orphanage that it should work for everyone now. Everybody has the orphanage and them together as the beacon point for them to survive this crazy psychedelic thing that we'll eventually get to. And of course it ends with a classic Laguna cramp. That is a lot of exposition that gets thrown at you, but if you go back inside the room, you can talk to Kyros, Ward, and Laguna again, and what they say says a lot and connects a lot of the dots. If you talk to Ward, and of course he doesn't talk back, but Kyros interprets for you, good thing you don't look like your father, which is such an accurate way a friend would bash another friend, because Laguna is right in the room with you, remember. And when you talk to Kyros, he says, you look very much like your mother, which, how would these guys know how Squall's mother looks? Unless... Then you go talk to Laguna. Let's talk when this is all done. I have a lot to tell you. Well, if you don't want to hear it, I'll understand. Which is something maybe a potential absent father would say. Now, it doesn't explicitly say it, but, I mean, you have to... It's right there, right? It's heavily implied that Laguna is Squall's father. A name sharing the water theme, rain also being water, especially when you take into account what these three say on the Ragnarok. It's right here. This is all the evidence you need. It all makes sense. The timeline works out. And it's actually really sad when you start thinking about it. Laguna never truly had the everlasting love story. He never came back from the war to go to Julia. And if you find out, that ends in a lot of tragedy too. Julia ends up marrying Fury Caraway. I always forget his name is Fury. And he's another military man, so Julia's obviously attracted to the soldier type. But it's later revealed that she ended up tragically dying in a car accident when her daughter was almost 5. Now the crazy part is this information is only stated in the profile section in the menu under Julia's character's profile. Another little tidbit buried in the menus, which is really cool again, but also probably not the best choice for pertinent information like this. Now, remember, he spent 6 months recovering in Wyndham from his injuries. Julia goes and marries somebody else, has a kid, who we will figure out connecting the dots is Rinoa. So that puts a whole nother can of worms in Rinoa's backstory and the tragedy, how she views her father and all the military stuff, and how he reacts to locking her in this mansion of his. Man, just kind of, it's sad, really. And it kind of, again, shows how she takes her tragedies of her past and how she reacts to it in the present. Very different from Squall. And we'll get the connection of how the destiny and love and everything being together, how it works out for Laguna and where it ties at the very end. So we have the mission, we have our parting words with Laguna and company, and we blast into the lunatic Pandora in this crazy, weird CGI cutscene of the Ragnarok using its hands to pull itself into an opening, into the hole of this new structure. And we got a proper dungeon. It's crazy. This part of the game, there's very little like making your way through a dungeon. It's almost absent in this part, in this disc entirely. So it's nice to actually break that up and finally feel like we're building towards something. We have a nice scene where Fujin starts speaking more than one word sentences, so that's pretty fun. She's finally fed up with everything, and she wants Cypher to realize he's being manipulated. And I love that she has this line that she's sad that she has to rely on Squall to get Cypher back. And basically, Cypher's arc at this point he's come too far, and he can't stop at this point, which seems like a decent character arc for him, where he's learning he's being manipulated, and his goal of being a knight is gone, so he just has to chase something new. And I think at this point, having Cypher be the main antagonist for this part, because you know Adele's out there in the periphery, and you have Ultimecia, but they're both not available. So we run into, okay, let's just fight Cypher. I don't know. The culmination of this one doesn't really work that well. Or maybe that's just because this is the third time we're fighting him at the end. Like even if this was a Dea here, I don't think I would like that either. So you beat him, he's lying on the ground, and then he just randomly pops up and he grabs Rinoa and steals her away. And then we have a scene of him walking her to Adele's prison. And that's the end of the disc. Now, if you're not doing like how I did this playthrough, I didn't do really any side quest in disc 3 at all. I did that when I was a kid, and I really like that, saving before you go into the Lunatic Pandora, and you have a lot to do. There's a lot of good stuff. If you're doing it like how I did it, it's such a strange culmination to this back half. I'll probably be forgetting a few things, but really the only like dungeon-like things we're doing is at the very end with Lunatic Pandora. We have to free the Ragnarok, which is more of a two-party puzzle-based system. There's a lot going on that's kind of difficult. And then you have your journey to get to Estar in the snowy place where you have that one boss fight. And I guess you have Zell and company going up the Lutanic Barn only to get yeeted out of there. So gameplay dungeon-wise is very, very little. That's why I said this pacing-wise on Disc 3 is so strange, because it's mainly just exposition, just scene after scene after scene. Even the Laguna part isn't really about exploring a dungeon either. Very minimal gameplay overall when you're looking at things. So my ranking so far is Disc 2, 1, 3. And there's a decent gap between 1 and 3. Actually, pretty big gap. Even though I love some of these character moments, there's just too much oddities with this disc. And it's definitely the weakest portion of the game. But now on to the finale, which I have a lot of thoughts. And they're mostly positive, which, yay! Disc 4 is body horror central. Cypher so meanly pushes Rinoa down in front of Adele, and Adele breaks out of her cage, and immediately we go into battle. Okay, this is a very different start to any other discs. Let's go. And Rinoa is Junction to the outside of Adele's body, near her chest. It is so freaking wild. And if you scan her, it specifically says that Adele is absorbing her powers. So this freaky, weird body horror, just Rinoa stuck to her body like that. It's so creepy and weird. And Adele is such a strange looking character. I have no idea what they are going for. I like it. It's just so much different than any of the other sorceresses. I think this is a nice initial fight for the disc. I assume if they were planning properly, they probably wanted this to be the last fight of the previous disc, but here we are starting off in a really high octane moment. Now, after you defeat Adele here and separate Rinoa from Adele, so she's no longer being absorbed, everything starts happening really quick. Cypher is no longer in the picture. We don't really get his story and what's happening here. What I do like is you can just look at Rinoa and tell that she is Ultimecia. She is not Rinoa. So Alone comes in, sends her back to her younger version of Adele. And Laguna says time compression will start shortly. And his pep talk is love, friendship, and courage. Show him what you got. And then psychedelic trip starts happening. This part is so wild, so freaking cool. You are dropping down. Things are melting, very Salvador Dali-like. Man, their minds, when trying to develop this out, just went places. And I love that they just feel like they threw everything. Little touches that I really like. When you finally find a space where you can hit the ground, where you met Adea, which was actual Ultimecia back then, for the first time, there are save points, but there's a bunch of them just populated everywhere, which I think is really cool. And then when you go into the next room, Adea gets up, and she stands up from her chair, and there's a bunch of bodies just kind of coming off of her, so it's like duplicating. So everything's just, all the timelines are really compressing and making things just all wacky. And we go into this sorceress boss gauntlet. These sorceresses, if you scan them, are from outside of time to stop you from reaching Ultimecia, which is kind of a cool thought process. Time is compressing, you're using it to get to Ultimecia, and she is summoning all these sorceresses to stop you from reaching her. I think that's pretty cool. And eventually you beat a bunch of these, and then it culminates into this more distorted, monster-looking snake configuration one that you have to fight, and that's a decently fun boss fight to go through. And then you've officially finished this boss gauntlet, and you've arrived at the orphanage like you all planned. But this future's a little bit different. You look out, and you get to see a glimpse of Ultimecia's castle and the future seeds that are trying to stop her. So the bodies are laid on the ground, and you look up, and all these chains are coming off of this castle, like plowed into the earth and where the orphanage is. And that's a pretty ominous change up from what we've seen before. And we enter. No hyperbole here. Probably the best final dungeon of any JRPG. I have played a lot of different games in this genre, and I would say most don't even come close to comparing to this. It strips you of all that you've gained, giving you freedom to choose which abilities you gain back in any order. It's a freaking gothic castle with puzzle elements to navigate, all while backed by this haunting and yet amazing song to listen to while you explore it. It's intricately designed, and it's such a blast to play through. And the best part is, if you leave the dungeon, you recover all your abilities, so you don't feel like, I have to unlock saving. You can run back to the start of the dungeon. That's a little just beautiful quality of life feature. And on top of that, if you draw from these various bosses spread around the castle, you can get the guardian forces that you missed along the way, so you can still witness them before you reach the end of the game. Super cool right there. You don't have to miss out on this aspect, because there's some of those summons are pretty hard to get. They also force you to split off into two groups, but thankfully our junction system makes this easy to do, so utilizing every single person in your party isn't a pain in this final dungeon. And oh boy, do your choices matter, because facing the red giant, if I hadn't gotten magic or guardian forces or something beyond my physical attack, I would have been in a world of hurt. But you could find another boss if that was the case too. I do love that. Plus, exploring the castle is interesting just to see what this future timeline looks like and what it has to offer. Who doesn't like running up winding stairs of a clock tower, the hands of a giant clock? Seriously, it's some of the most fun I've had in a final dungeon, because usually they are far too complicated, far too long, but this was just perfect for me. It was lengthy enough, and more importantly, if you want even extra stuff like fighting the strongest boss in the game, you can tackle that here too. All the elements just work together to be just magnificent. Once you make it down the clock tower, and you're on that last pathway, you just know she's going to be in there. You see that save point and you're like, this is it. I know that's where she is. Everything you could ask for in a final dungeon is right here. It's impeccable. And we find Sorceress Ultimecia on her throne, and she's angry at Seed. They keep coming for her, which is true, so she has every right to be pissed at this point. She threatens to send us to another different dimension where we'll be her slaves, and that is where we start the final battle. She picks who is in our battle. Another awesome wrinkle to throw in right at the very end. Honestly, I forgot about this aspect, so I did not have everyone junctioned. So Quistis got blipped out of time and space, and Selphie took her place. But I just love the aspect of her as a villain. I will start with you three. She just gets to pick who she's fighting. Love that. First phase of the fight is just the sorceress ready to kill us. But then she calls upon the strongest guardian force, and this badass winged lion monster rises from the ground, and it's Griever. Our ring manifested into a monster we have to face against the power within us. Pretty sweet and looks freaking awesome. And if you scan it, it even says, in Squall's mind, the strongest guardian force. Through Ultimecia's power, continues fighting without vanishing. So right at the end of the game, it kind of gives you some more guardian force lore. Ultimecia has become so powerful that they have no need to retreat. We only summon a fraction of the Guardian Force's power, whereas Ultimecia can keep it out indefinitely. That's pretty cool. When you finish this phase, it does this hugely cool, strong attack. And then Ultimecia junctions herself to Griever for another form. Yes, multiple forms, end boss, give it to me, please. These are some decently tough fights too, and another element that I really like is magic can just be blown away from your junction, so like, hope they don't get rid of the thing that's on my attack, or else I'm going to lose out on everything. But just knowing that all this hard work of collecting all this magic, hard work is in quotes, who knows, depends what you did, can be blown away through time. I just think that's super cool. And I was constantly reviving my teammates so they didn't get lost in time. And this feels like the last phase. But then she rises again. All existence denied. Gosh, that quote goes so freaking hard. All existence denied. Even at the end of the day, this baddie, well thought out is subjective, right? the motivations for her at this point don't seem to be too crazy. There's a little nuance, right? She's being hunted, so she's found a way to stop it, but fate has other plans. I just don't really understand her end goal. When she achieves it, it seems like she'll just waste away because there's nothing in existence. How is she going to survive? But again, maybe she is obtaining godlike powers, so she'll be able to craft a world to her own liking. Because she's really sick of all these seeds coming after her. And this form is so crazy and wild. She has a void for a face, and her other body is hanging below this one. And if you scan it, it says the point from which Ultimecia's magic power generates. All of time and space going into this point. That's pretty wild, and it just looks fucking weird, man. This another body horror thing. Just a crazy design for a last boss. And I felt that the last fight felt like a final boss phase, but this one screams last boss fight, especially in the design. You have the black void you're now fighting in too, so there's just nothing else. A very god monster-like design here at the end. Kind of works with the overall design of all the Guardian Forces being more monster-like. This is a demonic, faceless lady with wings and plenty of appendages, and just a frickin' hanging body in the middle of her. And if you scan her, it says, Ultimecia transformed to absorb all time and space, absorbing all existence as we speak. So it's happening in real time, unless we stop her. And it's a fun fight. She's got to move Hell's Judgment to bring your whole party down to 1 health, which is always crazy when that happens. So I was using Rinoa's Limit Break Invincible Moon to protect myself, and of course, Selfie's full cure right after that. And my usual boss fight setup worked for me. Use haste and triple, get all my peeps on protect and shield and regen, then I go to town. Such a fun fight. And when you defeat her, the sound design is so good. So that was a boss fight. Loved it. I love the imagery. I love the actual mechanics of the fight. And again, it's really hard for me not to like multiple phase boss fights. I don't know. It's just something I always love to come to in JRPGs. I know a lot of people don't like that because you die, you have to start all over. But I don't know. I feel like I need it in my JRPGs. Not always, but for the most part, love it. And we go on to the ending. Our characters are in this white void trying to get back to their time, all trying to remember to go back. Rinoa is asking for Squall. When we go over to Squall's point of view, he doesn't know where he is. He's running in a black void, a little bit different than the white one. And he ends up popping up in the past where Matron is chasing after a little Squall. And there were a lot of different reveals that happen along this game. This is where one that really happens, I think. So Ultimecia shows up after being defeated by Squall and the party in the future, coming back to look for a way to survive. And Adea offers herself up to be the inheritor of Ultimecia's power because she doesn't want Ultimecia to go into any of the children. And we do learn that the sorceress must pass on their powers to die in peace, which I'm pretty sure we did not know up until this point. So Ultimecia passes on her power, fades away, and Adea is wondering who this man standing next to her is. And he says, a seed from Balam Garden. And says they were both her idea. So now all the pieces fall into place. The whole reasoning for Adea to start this journey is because of Squall. He's destined to be the leader. So technically, for all the hate Squall has of having no control over his life and feeling like a puppet, he did it to himself. I find that to be such a fascinating revelation. We are our own worst enemies, as they say. I do love that Squall does the garden salute to her as he leaves to head to his time to get back to where he needs to be. And Adea probably used that garden salute because she saw Squall do it in the past, which is technically the future. I just find it so funny if Adea is just thinking, what gesture should we use to be universal in the garden? There it is. And I'll insert this here. When you look back on how some of the characters throughout the story act weird, specifically Sid, he is constantly pushing Squall to lead, even though he just became a seed. But when you then retroactively look at what he was saying, and now you have the information of how this ends, it all kind of makes sense. This ending justifies questionable plot designs, and it actually works this time. Why is this head of the garden pushing this youngster to lead? Here's why. It's one of the themes that's interwoven all throughout this game. Squall is destined to be the leader. Sid keeps pushing him for leadership roles because all he knows about the future is that someone comes from the future who is a member of Seed wielding a gunblade. Hence why Sid says, finally, a gunblade specialist when you become a Seed. That's such a brilliant bit of foreshadowing, even if it's one line very early in the game, and there is a lot that happens that little tidbit, that one throwaway line, could vanish from your memory. But here it is, and it all makes sense. I do think, though, because we know that Sephir took the Seed exam more than once, and the disappointment in Sid every single time he's like, he's wielding a gunblade and he keeps freaking failing. He's probably going back to his little suite at the garden and fucking drinking himself all night long. Like, maybe the future can't be saved. Cypher, what are you doing? He must have been irate. So Squall leaves the matron of this past. Obviously, he went the wrong way or somehow. So he's trying to find his way home. And it's not looking good from the black void to this plane of his existence where it seems like nothing is there in this gray mist land. And then Rinoa shows up. She seems to be, though, in a different place. Still murky, but the ground looks more like a field with grass. So maybe she did make it to that field that they were talking about. Cut back to Squall, and a single white feather is flowing back down to Squall, where he grasps it, and his environment changes, and he sees Rinoa, but her back is facing him. And you can see him calling out to her, and when she turns to face him, things get weird. They have the scene where they first met in the dance hall, yet everything keeps repeating and gets distorted. Random other scenes start splicing in for a second or two. I think Squall in this moment is re-experiencing timelines and his life up to this point. Everything he's done on this grand adventure, but it's erratic and mixing together and repeating over and over again. This is so well done. It makes you feel uncomfortable, and you're just wanting it to work out for them and find their way to each other. And there's some very trippy artwork towards the end where the image of Squall, but he has no face, kind of very much like Ultimecia in the final form. You also have Rinoa dying in space, and then it just does this hard cut. A single tear drops out, and then he like leans back and everything goes white. And it softly shifts to a floating white feather, and Rinoa appears where Squall has been lost. And Squall looks pretty dead. And Rinoa is overcome with emotion, and she grabs him and holds on to him, and this release of emotion and her hugging him cause an explosion of petals and the world coming back into focus like they're out in the fields next to the orphanage, presumably. And then it starts switching off to different scenes. The first scene is Cypher trying to fish, and Raijin is having a lot more luck. Cypher gets pissed, Fujin knocks Raijin into the water to make Cypher laugh, and this is his ending. He found his way back to his comrades that eventually abandoned him for Squall to knock some sense into him. Looks like it worked. And again, like I will echo what I said before. I feel like Cypher needed one connecting scene after throwing Rinoa before Adele. But I don't know what it would have been because it was such a quick pace for how this game moved forward afterwards. At this stage, for all the manipulation he's gone through, but also chasing his dream over his friends at the garden, especially at the end where he kidnaps Rinoa, there's just a lot there with no resolution to that budding conflict between Squall and Cypher. So I don't know where I land. I'm fine with him surviving and having some sense of normality back. Just because he's done some shit doesn't mean he can't find redemption. And it kind of seems like they're echoing that he has been exiled. He won't be going back to the garden. And maybe he's found peace with that. And I will say, seeing him smile up at Balam Garden passing him by, there is some emotional resonance that I felt in that moment. And maybe that's good enough. Then Laguna gets his scene. Our President Laguna, looks out over a field, and then he jumps back to a younger self. He is 27 at this, well, this is 6 months later at least, so maybe 28 years old, Laguna, and Rain is standing before him. He gives her a ring, and he's wearing a matching one. And then they embrace. This is beautiful. We get this very important moment. Seeing Laguna happy makes me happy. Because I don't think they ever stated in the main game that they ended up marrying each other, or at least were engaged. And I love that he's reflecting on this moment. Because then we go back to the present Laguna, and I love that the lyrics from Eyes on Me say at this point, "Darling, so there you are." And it shows Laguna walking up to Rain's gravestone. Darling, so there you are. That little touch, I think, is so just beautifully done. And it also shows that she took his last name. Then Alone shows up with Kiros and Ward. Alone is waving so happily at Laguna, and the last shot of him is kneeling before his lover's grave, and Balam Garden flying overhead. His globe-trotting tale has at least a semblance of an end. His plan that he came up with worked. So I imagine he's going to take care of Alone with his buddies Kiros and Ward. He'll try to be more present there for her, though I assume he'll still be a pretty busy man over in Esser. That last shot, though. Was this a fitting end for him and his story? There are still so many things that happened in order for this to work. All the people he had to lose to get here. It's kind of tragic when you start to think of what his decisions led to, how much of the world changed, the people, the loved ones he, had to push aside to do what he thought was right. But he wasn't really thinking. That was the other thing. He kind of slowly confronted in that last dream state we were in about, I really should think through my decisions. And now he's finally reflecting. And the thing he's reflecting on is the memory that is such a bright spot in his career is him proposing to Rain and them embracing. I still think he has a lot more to do in this future. I do believe this closes the book on enough of his story for me where I felt satisfied. I would have loved more from him in the main game, but we got a decent chunk and he had a lot of goofy moments that honestly more distract you from the heartbreak he goes through. Now he can be that dependable dad figure, hopefully. Laguna lore, my favorite goofball. I'll miss you. And that's technically the ending shot, Laguna and the garden. But now we have the credits and it's from a handheld camera, which is an interesting choice, but it does make it feel like what a bunch of kids would choose to do at a party. This is just so fun. We get to see some interesting interactions too. Irvin trying to dance and be close to Quistis. Sid introduces Adea in her no longer Ultimecia-inspired clothes. So Quistis and Irvin go pay their respects. Selphie takes Irvin's hat, which is super cute, only for him to focus on some other girls in the background. Zell finally gets his hot dogs, and he's about to die from choking on eating so many because he doesn't have any liquid left in his glass. But the girls save him, Quistis and Selphie. And then he ends up throwing a hot dog bun at the camera, which is ridiculous. But also it's cool. Girl with the pigtail there at the table with him. Good job, Zell. The final camcorder shot is Selphie pointing in a different direction and being all excited. You can just tell from her expression, where we get to see Rinoa out on the balcony, and she's pointing in the sky and looking towards someone. And it's from the angle that it's being shot at, we can't tell who it is, and it cuts off. Now, young Michael was screaming at the TV. Just show him. My brothers were watching this ending with me, and they too were like, what the heck? Come on, please. And more credits roll, and I thought they were going to leave it up to interpretation, and I would have been very mad as a kid. Thank God they don't. Because to me, that would be a slight mar on this ending. I know some people like the vagueness of endings, but I didn't want to have doubts that that could be another person, that this is not all a dream, that Squall actually never made it back from that crazy place, that she's just talking to a ghost. I don't know. There could be so many interpretations. And to me, I wanted concrete confirmation and footage to go along with it that Squall survived. So the credits are done, and we pan out, and we get to see Balam Garden flying through the night. Rinoa's overlooking the balcony. And she sees that shooting star. And when she turns, Squall is there. And he's looking at her, and he's smiling. A genuine smile. And then it transitions into a higher angle shot, slowly panning out, and Squall gently pulls Rinoa into an embrace and kisses her. And it zooms out and we see our garden floating in front of the moon. And end of the game. Final Fantasy VIII, 1999. Man, I think this ending is perfect for this game. Even if the game doesn't hit every story mark 100% of the time, I think it absolutely nails this ending. It has all the emotion, the tension, we get to see each of our characters. They don't explicitly say what these characters are going to be doing after these scenes. They leave that open to interpretation. But we get enough concrete answers to the ones we thought lost in time. I was extremely satisfied, and present Michael still is as well. Though this is a story about love and there wasn't much room for third wheels. Irvin will remain a flirt, maybe Selphie and him will hit it off because of the whole stealing his hat thing, unsure, but he doesn't really change and do much in this story as a whole. Selphie's got a decent amount of range, seeing her Trabia garden and her high-spirited shenanigans, and her directness with Squall makes for a good character, and just a fun character. Not every character needs pages of backstory to make them leave an impact, obviously. Quistis may have a role within the school still. She wards off Irvin, so she's setting her boundaries, which is good. She's the most vague, I'd say, of the group, and really her only character development is how she outgrows her past relationship and hopes she finds someone like Squall in the future. I think she needed a little bit more screen time. Maybe all the side characters did, but I feel like her story, she has some great moments towards the end, like calling Squall a fool. But yeah, I think she needed a little bit more. She kind of got the worst end of this shtick, I think. Zell is with Pigtail's girl, which, if you've done that side quest, is very fitting for this end. He got his goal of being a bro to Squall, eating his hot dogs. He kind of made out this game like a bandit. Good for him. I really like him, and he's on the higher tier for characters in this game. Laguna is at peace, or at least he's starting to be. Cypher might be too. Squall found his way home to the girl he can't live without, Rinoa. She went to the void of time to get him and brought him all the way back to find their shooting star and start their life together. They are the stars of the show, so it's kind of fitting. The interesting part about Squall is he gets the most screen time, obviously. We hear all his thoughts, and he has the most staying power, but he never fully comes out of his shell. I mean, you could maybe say this very ending shot of him smiling, which is so beautiful, love it, is him getting there, and this journey will now make him go on to be something more once this game is now over. And what I like what they did at this ending is gives Rinoa more time to shine. Squall failed at coming back. He did it wrong, right? He was supposed to think about the orphanage, he went to a different time, and then he got lost. It was Rinoa that reached out and brought him back. So she subverted the trope of have to be saved by the man. No. Squall promised, didn't deliver, but she made him keep his promise by going to get him. Gosh, this ending to me, it's just so freaking good. Squall and Rinoa destined to be together. Because this ending shows that Laguna did find love eventually. He married Rain, engaged, whatever, but he never got to see his child born. He never got to see Squall when he was a kid. Laguna missed so much, and he had his own bad habit of not thinking everything through. It wasn't destined to work out for Laguna and Julia, but both of their own kids end up finding each other and continuing the dream they initially envisioned for themselves. That's why it's so fitting that Eyes on Me plays in the airship when it's just Rinoa and Squall together alone. Laguna got his ending through Squall and Rinoa. What a beautiful, unconventional way to wrap that story up. So here we are at the end of this long journey with Squall, Rinoa, Laguna, and company. As I've been gestating on this game for years, I always come away with a simple thought. What a wildly unique experience. For this to be a mainline Final Fantasy game, built in roughly 2 years, and for it to come out on the other side looking and playing like this, it's a beautifully ambitious anomaly. Young Michael was completely smitten with the love story and the sheer spectacle of it all. Present Michael, me right now, has found a totally new appreciation for the deeper themes of regret, the hidden lore, and the reality of these characters' harsh lives. I've played this game in various stages of my life, and I walk away with a different meaning almost every single time. But what is it? How do you sum up Final Fantasy VIII? With past me influencing what I'm saying now, I can't divorce that part of me, but trying to distill down everything into one simple verdict, I think I land on this. There is simply nothing quite like Final Fantasy VIII. I've played a massive amount of JRPGs, and there isn't a single game I can point to that gives me this exact same feeling as this one. Not all of its massive detours find their way back home, and its mechanics actively push back against you at times, but eventually forms into this perfect mess in its own brilliant way. Past Michael, even after playing Final Fantasy VII, IX, X, claimed this as his favorite Final Fantasy. But does that mean it's worth your time? I could easily split this into a conditional yes or no because of its highly polarizing design, but I'm going with the simple single verdict. Yes, it's worthy of your time. And it keeps coming back to what I had said previously. There isn't anything quite like Squall's messy but deeply caring journey that's out there. It's a spectacle showcase that a lot of those aspects still hold up today, and it dared to be radically different when it would have been so much easier to play it safe. But because it decided to break the mold and be different, I think it's worth experiencing whether this experiment worked out. And there have been plenty of games that had a perception around it that stopped me from picking up the controller. And I think about those games that I got to, and man, it would be very disheartening that I never actually got to experience it, all because of something I heard or read online. But if you do, if you take this journey, just revel in the beauty. Just let it wash over you. Take your time. And just be prepared to be stunned by the majestic hair of Laguna. It may not be the objectively best Final Fantasy, probably far from it, but like Michael from the past, this is my Final Fantasy. And the best part? Future Michael will inevitably do another playthrough because I still haven't collected every single Triple Triad card, and that's eating away at me. Well, Final Fantasy VIII is no longer lost to time, and I couldn't be happier. If you've enjoyed this retrospective, well, we have more coming in the future. At least I hope we're still in the proper point in time to give you some bits of my time. If you want more PS1 nostalgia and retrospectives,